Everybody ready?
It's 6 o'clock. Oh my goodness.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 5th meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of the exits around the room and now join us as we reaffirm our fealty to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A quick housekeeping note. Next Monday, the town board will be interviewing potential replacements for Mr. Murphy. I believe we have 6 people interested. Yes.
There was 4 last count.
Yes, we have a lot of people interested, and for the record, I will be sitting in along with Chad in the interviews. They take place at 6 p.m. next Monday.
Oh, wow.
The first item on the agenda is a new public hearing for STAATS-CREED lot line realignment. This is, the applicants are seeking both site plan, special use permit, and a minor subdivision lot line realignment in the Riverfront District. Making a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, I'll let you take over.
So my name is David Freeman. Good. I am the architect for the project. It's a 2-part presentation. It is a little bit complicated as far as the project, just as far as the steps. So the first one, which is displayed, is the lot line rearrangement between the owners of 58 River Road and 60 River Road. Very simply, a transfer of 0.07 acres from one owner to the other. I think that should be relatively simple. It does involve the ZBA. Right now, 58 does have a generator and a fence that are sitting on the other property. So that was presented last week to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They did not vote on that because you have to go first before we transfer ownership. That was the easier one. The other part of the presentation is there is an accessory apartment on 60 River Road. And so that's a little more complicated. The existing house at 60 River Road was built in 1982 with a certificate of occupancy. There was a garage built 60 River Road in 1983 with a certificate of occupancy. In the early 1990s, there was an apartment above the garage on the main floor of the garage constructed. There's no record of its construction. So the owners of 60 River Road, as they go forward to sell the property, are wishing to legalize that as an accessory apartment. It will have some building code work after we're all done, but you're the easier one at this point. So that also has worked before the ZBA. It did require a density variance. It's putting 2 houses, 2 parcels, 2 buildings essentially on one parcel. Going below the minimum of 2 acres per unit. That was
2.5 in waterfront.
That was approved last week with the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe that meets pretty much the presentation. There was a question from the Board of Health concerning the new septic system for 60 River Road. And so I do have drawings. I have an engineer sitting behind me too, but I have drawings.
Thank you.
I'm showing, I had asked them to prove out the septic is fit because I think that's what this is.
So there is an existing septic system on the property right now for the second building. There's no really way of documenting it from 1992, so we are proposing to put in a brand new septic. That does require Board of Health approval. One of the questions the Board of Health had, which was sent to you, was that the impervious retention that would be required for the new septic was going on to the western edge, so onto the train track edge. The drawing before you is a revised drawing saying that is no longer a condition. It has not been submitted to the Board of Health yet, but essentially your approval and then their approval would be the next step. I can explain the drawing. It's a complicated, the new septic is in back of the property, so there's actually two parts to it. You'll see there's two 28-foot primary laterals, and then there's two 28-foot secondary. So in a case that the first part has to be replaced, you can't put the second fill pad in without doing the first fill pad, so the whole entire fill pad for both the first, and if it need replacement, will go in. And it's the slope of the embankment to retain that the Board of Health sent you a letter addressing the issue. That, again, has been revised, and the Board of Health will have to be satisfied.
That can be a condition of approval, of course.
Right.
In the interim, Ms. Moss also rendered a decision. If you recall, there's the unapproved second accessory apartment had an exterior staircase. Mr. Freeman made the argument that because this is actually, the land behind it rises steeply, that essentially this is on the first floor.
Right.
Ms. Moss agreed, so there is no requirement to enclose the staircase. As Mr. Freeman noted, they got the density variance from the ZBA. There's also an area variance for the generator and the fence that's pending. Because we need to go ahead and do approval of the final subdivision plat before they can actually act on the variance, because they would still be granting a variance on someone else's land until that's done.
Yes.
You mentioned the sewage disposal system relocation, and I think that's probably it, except for one other item I want to get into the record, that this is an accessory apartment. Accessory apartments require that the owner live on premises. I don't believe they live there right now, but, because I met the couple who's renting it for a while. She's an artist, and I think he's a developer from New Jersey. So at a pre-application meeting, it was discussed whether they should go for the density variance to be a two-family site, and they chose to go with the accessory apartment, which means that at some point, the owners will need to occupy the site in order to make that legal. That may be a condition. I'm not sure. We'll defer that over to the attorney. Let me start with our consultants. Ms. Axelson, any comments? And thank you, Mr. Freeman. That was a good summation. Mr. Sotero?
No, the only thing I had asked before, and they show it now, is the existing septic location on parcel 1. That was the only comment.
Thank you. Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
No additional comments.
Let me start to my right. Ms. DiNapoli?
No comment at this time.
Mr. Oliver?
No comments.
Ms. Dexter?
My only comment is that I can't believe the history of this and all the twists and turns it has taken. So my hat's off to everybody for figuring out all the bits and pieces and getting it through.
Mr. Piggott?
No comment.
Ms. Weiser?
I have none.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? There being none, I believe that we're prepared to take some action this evening? Yes? Except for a sketch?
Yep.
We have a resolution prepared to accept the sketch plan, and according to Ms. Moss, this will be sufficient for you to go back to the zoning board and obtain a variance.
Yes, for the generator, yes.
Sue has this resolution?
I do.
Thank you.
Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, resolution to accept the sketch plan, STAATS-CREED, September 5th, 2018, resolution number 2018-26. Whereas, now therefore it be resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the subdivision plat as a minor subdivision pursuant to section 96-12V, parenthetic 2, of the subdivision law. 2, accepts sketch plan in accordance with section 96-12C of the subdivision law.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. I think we should adjourn the public hearing to October 3rd. That'll give you a chance to get the variance this month, I believe, if you're already on there. You're already in their pipeline. So I'm going to motion to continue this to October 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good luck
you.
for the next step. The next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for Jeffrey Groves Estates. This is both a re-subdivision and a site plan approval for property located at 39-41 North Cross Road. This has been discussed extensively thus far. Welcome back, Mr. Kaufman. I hope you're feeling well.
Thank you.
You're looking well
Working on
after
it.
the
Thank you.
surgery.
I appreciate it.
So may I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Lauren O'Neill, newly minted from Vanderbilt Law School.
Oh.
the next wave that you will have to contend with. So, anyhow,
Can you say your full name again? for me?
Lauren O'Neill.
Are you related to Mr. Finbar O'Neill?
Yeah, that's my dad.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And congratulations, Tim. You must be
So-
very proud. Thank you.
Keeping it close.
Okay. We had some new, thank you, we had new plans submitted. And I know that there's, part of what was submitted was a dated letter from Dutchess County Department of Public Works that's still back in 2007. That's going to need to be updated to say that they still approve of the entrance. And you have, I know there's been discussion about the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, for those in the audience who might not understand what I'm saying. I believe Mr. Sotero has been asking you to confirm that the notice of intent is still active. I gather if it's not.
And it is.
It
No,
is, okay, so you
It is.
confirmed it.
It is, that was,
Good.
confirmed. So that means that,
They're still in the older regulations.
yes. Well, I believe that, you're updating the Daniels Wayside to conform to the most current regs. Is that right, Brian?
When I modeled everything, it was with the current rainfall and
Right.
all the current standards showing that there's enough capacity in the pond, given the reduced impervious and the new runoff numbers.
Yeah. So basically, now that we know that the NOI that was filed is still valid, the other section on the
Blair Road.
Blair Road side, that's all fine. We don't need to go back and look at any of the stormwater there. So that we just found that out a few days ago. So now we can finish our review of the SWIP. But I honestly, like looking at it, I don't anticipate we're going to have a lot of comments because it's basically the same area of the stormwater pond as we had under the first approval. So I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
Great, thank you.
May I make a comment to the planning board? So we've been at this for some time, of course, and I think it was today that I got a request for the stormwater management plan from Ms. Moss. And I just would hope that if there's anything else that she would like us to perform or provide, that she take care of that now, because this is not the first time that I've had an 11th hour request. At our very last meeting, she came up with a variety of problems that she needed to have addressed. So I would ask that if there are other things, because it's also not in my guide to getting final approval. It's none of the conditions here. It mentions a stormwater management plan, which is okay. We'll prepare that. I just would hope that we know what we have to do from that one.
So what was happening was we were getting plans submitted to us without Ms. Moss determining that they're administratively complete. That's required in the code that Ms. Moss actually refer them to us. Ms. Moss was giving them to us because she has additional responsibilities now, both as a stormwater management officer and zoning enforcement officer, et cetera. So we were getting plans, and what was happening was just what's been happening with you. Tad would say, oh, wait, I forgot this, I forgot this, I forgot this. So what we're doing now is going back to the way we used to operate as of prior to 6 years ago. It's sometimes applicants are being fussy, saying, why aren't we going to the planning board? It's because I wanted to stop this slow dribble, piecemeal approach of requesting information that could have been determined at the very outset that was necessary. So I will speak with Tad myself, though, to see, I'm going to tell her to ask me now if there's anything else.
The permit is often a condition of approval.
Right.
I think
I understand.
it's being.
It's just that this is not the first time
Right.
that, this must be my 6th meeting,
Right.
and something that I understand could have been asked for at the beginning, and it's being asked for now, and it doesn't really delay anything, and it's okay, and Ms. Morse is, she works
Nice to work
very
with,
hard.
I agree.
But just that
It does
it's
actually,
awkward.
we can either have the delay built into the front, so that therefore, once it comes to us, we have everything we need and can continue to proceed, or.
Well, I'm grateful that in this particular instance, you didn't wait, so I got in front of you, but nonetheless,
Right.
if Tad could focus on whatever else she needs, which is legit, I would greatly appreciate it, so we can get it in, because hopefully there will be, as much as I enjoy seeing you, there will be an end to this, I hope.
And vice versa. We also hope
Yeah.
the same, I assure you.
Because I would, yeah.
Brian, do you want to go through whatever the changes were that you submitted from last time?
We submitted first the final plat,
application with a much more inclusive set of plans. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to take a look at those
I did.
as of yet. I think they're much more in line with what the expectations
Right.
were. The surveyor has provided us with all the meets and bounds and the legal descriptions. The applicant is proceeding with obtaining all of his legal approvals, so on and so forth. I had submitted the colored rendering and the floor plans. None of that has changed. If anybody would like to see them, no?
We'll see.
And-
I don't recognize everyone. There might be some people here wanting to speak about it, so we'll see.
Okay, and we've addressed, tried to address most of the comments from the June 19th memorandum, including, we've revised some of the small trivial mistakes, the numbering of the pages, a couple call-outs on the notes. We have fixed the lighting plan so that we're not more than 12 feet high from top of luminary to base.
Thank you, because that's one of the ones that I caught.
We submitted the blank draft easements. I think we got most of the comments. We're still going to move forward with the SWIP with the comments as we receive them. I think that's summarizes most of the changes. We've show the snow storage at the end of the Hammerhead cul-de-sac. There is, my opinion, ample room between the edge of pavement and the stone wall, which is within the right-of-way. In addition to, even if it spills over into the pavement, this is a very sizable space. In one of the previous approvals, they called it a snow head.
Snow to Zach.
Snow to sack, yes. There wasn't too many notes here, so I think we got most of them.
Thank you. Ms. Axelson, any comments?
I had done a review before I went on vacation and sent out an email that a number of comments were addressed from our June 19th review memo. And let's see. I know that we will go through and do a final plat checklist, even though I believe, having been through site plan requirements and subdivision requirements, we probably have most of those details, but we'll check things like meets and bounds on easements, et cetera. I still had trouble finding the limited disturbance line, and some of the remaining things, I believe, could be resolved in offline consultation. We need still some notation governing the potential for the pond to drain during excavation and all that. I think that the phasing outlines are in better shape. In other words, phases overlapping for individual lots. But I wanted to touch base with Brian on a few of those items. And then I want to talk to him about easements. They generally look okay, but I want to double check the way notation is. Those are my main things. So if it's all right with the board, I'm going to work with Pete to finalize a memo and then get together with Brian perhaps on the phone or in a meeting and go over some remaining technical issues.
I take it we're trying to knock out all the conditions by having additional memos in these meetings, so we can make it less burdensome?
That's the goal. There were a number of items in Brian's response letter that said comment noted, and that items would be provided later. So I'll just reiterate those if they haven't been addressed.
Thank you.
And then we'll look at the SWIP.
Mr. Sotero, any additional comments?
Brian, how are you guys, or how's the team making out with County Health Department and Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority? Just as an update, just to give an update.
Right, so McGoey Hauser and Ed Saul
Right.
are our engineers for that reapproval, updated sewer treatment plant. The plans have been submitted, the revised plans. We got the comments and we've acted upon them. They've been submitted back to the Department of Health. And so I have not received any, update from them, whether or not they're acceptable or further comment. And certainly, I assure you that as soon as I hear from them, hopefully positively, I will express mail that to you guys. So I appreciate that. But, excuse me, Liz, did you want me to email you these easements? Are you reviewing them as well? I mean,
The only thing as far as the easements is that we'll have to review the
Meets and bounds.
the meets and
the
bounds?
meets and bounds. So as long as, well, yeah, I mean, typically we'll just check the written meets and bounds descriptions with, the map, make sure that they close. So, honestly, I haven't looked
Okay.
to
So
see if
you-
we have them.
Well, I have sent a bunch on to Victoria. I can submit, maybe it's easier if I submit them en masse to Pete and
Yeah,
Liz.
that would be fine.
So you don't have to look in the hundreds of emails I have sent out
There's been
to
a lot.
confuse everybody, and so you guys can take a look
Yeah,
at it.
that's
I
fine.
did have Mike Dalbo update all of the meets and bounds, so you should, hopefully they're correct.
Okay, yeah, if you could do that, because we were
No problem.
both on vacation
Yeah.
last
Okay,
week, so.
no worries, we'll take care of that.
They were mostly sent to Victoria and me, and there's a
that-
pile.
Yeah, normally I forward them to Pete once I'm done looking at them, but in this case, it would be helpful if he got started reviewing them. And
Might be a little over sized, so I might have to give you,
Why don't you
we'll
set up a
figure
drive?
something out.
They were included in the PDF to the town on the CD. I didn't print them out. No one had actually requested them, but I had them.
The
And
PDFs.
PDFs,
The description.
descriptions. So I threw them in the CD, just there, without actually printing them. I didn't, at that time, know if anyone needed them. I hadn't thought to submit them for any particular purpose
The
at
board
that
doesn't
point.
really look at them. I do
I-
sometimes, that's about it.
Yeah.
Victoria, we rely on our consultants for those.
Well, as I was telling Victoria before, it was a lot of fun having her backing down rather than me every month. So I've inundated her with a lot of work, but of course I will pay for that later, so that's the way that works.
get out my red pen.
So you'll either take a look at the CD that was included with the last submission, or you can just have them emailed either way. Anything else, Mr. Sotero?
No.
And one more note, there was one easement line I wanted to discuss with Bryant as it's shown on the plan, so that we can get clear on that. And then we'll see meets and bounds eventually on those. So.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Get that done.
Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
No, just that I have a very large pile of legal documents sitting on my desk. So they have made the effort to give them to us ahead of approval. I'll go through them. They will still need to be made conditions of approval because they'll
Have
need
to be
to be
filed.
recorded, but we're making progress.
As long as, I have a feeling that this might be a heavily conditioned approval, so we're trying to knock down as many
Right.
conditions as possible in advance. One of the reasons I've discovered also is we have to have sign-off from both Victoria and Pete's office, including Liz, and Tad. And when there's a lot, Tad has a little bit of a breakdown there. So it's better for you to have as few as possible. We know there still has to be a lot because all the easements have to be recorded with the county clerk's office, et cetera. But as we can get as much of this done in advance, I think it'll help you move forward, follow up.
So on the resolution, it described, the various conditions that had to be performed, and then it said that before I get a building permit, I had to show proof of recording of the various easements. So I was assuming that meant that I could break ground and start installing infrastructure. And
Without a
not
building permit?
Without a building.
And what's going to
permit.
give you the permission to do that?
Well,
I'm sorry, what?
What would give you the permission to do that if you don't have a building permit?
Well, I thought a building permit would be for the building.
I don't believe,
I think this is the situation that we had earlier, where Don won't issue a building permit for a structure until the infrastructure is started or completed.
then what would this be going under the SWIP?
So I think we need to have an offline conversation
Right.
about how to time this. But I think we did do it when we did preliminary plat approval, and we talked about it. So we'll just sit down again, and I think it would be worth it to sit with Don
That's what I was going to say, we need to
And
probably
make
have
sure
Don in
he's on the
this.
same page as us, just so there are no surprises after approval is granted.
Um,
I
once-
thought some of that was, we pointed to it in the phasing and construction sequence
Right,
notes.
yes.
and-
After I've signed
So
the
we'll have to
site, but
revisit
this is
this.
after I sign the site plan. You mean after I sign the site plan?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, all right. I'm
after
sorry. I
sign
thought you
the
meant
site
now.
No,
plan-
I was
like-
just saying, it says, no, the resolution says before I can get a building permit. And to
Fine,
me,
yes,
that
that's
always
exactly
meant
right. Well,
Yes, yes.
Yes, that's
That's-
right. Mr. Westermeyer will not let you pull a building permit unless there's able to have water and
So
sewer.
I mean, obviously, I would need the site plan and the plat
Yes,
signed
okay,
and
okay,
filed.
sorry.
Right,
And
because
then
you
I
can't
would
record the
start
documents
my
until we get
roads,
the
et
filed
cetera.
plat numbers. It's,
Right, okay. Let me start to my left then. Any additional comments?
No,
Ann?
no, thank you.
Mr. Pickett?
No comment.
Ms. Dexter?
No?
Mr. Oliver?
No comments.
Ms. DiNapoli?
It's nice to have you back.
True.
You're looking good.
Yeah.
You got color
Thank
in
you
your
very much.
cheeks. That's good.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? So I have a comment. When I went through the plans, this is something for the board to consider. We had a neighbor who lives across the
Right,
street
right.
who requested additional landscaping in front of the wastewater treatment facility.
Right.
I believe it's set 75 feet back from the main roadway.
I think it was
Something?
closer to 60. I
60,
think.
sorry. I'm bad with scales, as they can tell you. In the last meeting we had, you said, well, maybe we can do that later on if you feel like we need to.
Yes.
There's no trigger that would, if we drove by and say, after I've signed the site plan and subdivision, there's no trigger that'd say, oh, we think you need to do it after all. So, board members, can you consider driving by and taking a look? I mean, there's natural vegetation there. Some of it will be removed as part of the construction of the wastewater treatment facility. We do require screening between residential and non-residential uses. I'm not really sure a wastewater treatment facility that's associated with the residential use is actually non-residential, but you can stretch it either way. So drive by.
Well, but especially one that's been architected to
It's-
look nice.
This is a really pretty building.
Yeah.
It looks like the
Right.
rest of the main residences. I mean, you might have people confused when they go by. So I personally didn't think it was necessary. And again, you're going to allow the natural vegetation to come back at some point with a small amount of clearing around for access. So I just want to put this into the record because there is no real way for us to say, I mean, once it's beyond this board, it's beyond this
We're done.
board. So if you get a moment, drive by. Do we all know where the wastewater treatment facility is going to be?
Not exactly.
Is there a way you could locate that for us with a flag or something?
Certainly.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think actually you can determine some vague, place, because it's next to the stream. So, I mean.
I could
there is-
figure, I sort of figured it out when I was out there.
But I mean, if it.
When
if
you're
it'll
driving
help.
on that road, it's very hard to
Okay.
figure that out, but just maybe
I
right
will-
next to
I will put some
a
flags
stake with a
out
little.
there to have something to give you an
I would
idea of where the
suggest to the
driveway
board-
is going to be.
I would suggest to the board, again, we're amenable to doing that if.
Yeah, I know. That's why I just want to figure out.
And my other point is that, of course, this was part of the old approval. Nonetheless, we want to be good neighbors.
Thank you.
So that's okay.
And if you can just shoot me an email when it's done being flagged.
No problem.
So what are we looking at in terms of the future for this application right now? It seems like we should be able to, adjourn this to the next meeting? Does that give everyone enough time to go through the new submissions and compare with
Would be,
September
The 19th.
the 19th?
yeah, I mean, we can get something.
You can hear
done.
from the board that we're pretty much poised to go forward, but I know that you guys
We
still
know
have
you
a
have
lot
a
of work
mountain
to
of
do
stuff,
too.
yeah.
So we're gonna continue the hearing, right? I mean, if we could work, together and get some technical things like done, I mean, I think we'd be in a better position to consider maybe conditional final at your first,
October meeting?
October meeting, but.
Does that sound okay to you?
It does. I've been working through the numbered conditions in your
Mhm.
preliminary conditional plat approval. And so I'm hopefully getting those done. And Brian has addressed all of the
He's been
engineering comments.
Working
No, they've been-
consistently down.
No, they've been
so-
good. That's-
Yeah.
Yeah, so my only
we've been
concern now
behind,
is I need
honestly.
to get that DOH approval.
Yep, well, that'll be a
And
condition.
then with that, I can
Right.
determine, we can work on, bonding numbers. And, and so whatever gets me closer to breaking ground is what makes us happy. So that's my comment. So I appreciate, next meeting, let's see how close I am.
I was going to say, let's
That's
adjourn
fine.
this, make a motion to adjourn this to October 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That way, this gives you a month, it gives you a month to get everything cleaned up.
Yeah,
what
we'll
was
work
the
back and
19th?
forth. I
Okay,
mean,
good.
we'll keep,
I
you know,
just-
the board informed, but
Every
Yeah,
time that
we're
we have a
talking, you know,
public hearing, you're getting
technical
charged for escrow, et cetera. And I don't think we're going to have enough time in 2 weeks to move forward
No,
to
that's fine.
a resolution,
No,
but I
that's
think we
fine.
might in a month.
As long, you know,
this
as
way it
long
would
as I
give
knock
us
off
time
these
so we don't have
conditions
as
on
many
it.
conditions
Right.
and just, it'll just make it easier.
Right.
Do we
Plus,
have,
Victoria has to write the resolutions, and she still has a mountain of legal material to go through as well.
So you're all good. Now, the planning board is all good with the architecturals?
Yes, if you recall, they adjusted the colors to those
Right.
suggested by Diane and Ann at the
Okay.
last meeting, and we all thought they looked kind of slicker and sleeker, and if I can use this term, a little more sturdy or something. So at any rate, and I think the plan looks nice. You've taken care of a bunch of details. That's why I went through it,
all right.
because I saw there were a few, Liz and I caught a few errors last time, but all those were corrected. So the only thing I could discover was that we hadn't changed the landscaping in front of the wastewater treatment facility. I thought we didn't require that of you. It was just suggested, and there was the statement of, well, we're willing to do it. But in speaking to Tad, there's no way to trigger that unless we require it now. So that's why I thought if we could all just, Ann lives on the street, she goes by it back and forth every day.
One
If you-
street over, but.
Well, I'm sorry, that's right, one street over, not North Cross, South Cross. But I use it as a cut through to get to 9G whenever I have to go north
Yep.
on 9G, because it's the shortest between 9 and 9G. So I'm there a lot, and I thought we could all go by and see it. That'll help us.
So if you think that landscaping is appropriate, let us know.
If you
We'll
can
make a
actually,
note and-
like I said, I was out actually walking around, and I thought, I think this is where it is. I
Right,
pasted, I
it's
think
just-
this is how long it's going to be. So if you can just like do a flag at each corner where it's going to be, that's all we need.
And you don't need surveyed points, you're
No.
just looking for general areas.
General
A-
areas.
And to be honest, you could just, I mean, for my purpose, you could just put those flags right at the road, because you can look
Yeah.
at the road and then look back and go,
No,
it's
that'll
about
be
60
easy
feet
enough.
back
Yeah,
from
that's
there.
fine.
And then, so
Rather
then
than-
you put
Make
it
it
all
as
in
easy
there,
as possible.
like 60 foot back or something.
Okay?
Yep.
So
That'll
shoot
work.
me an email in between, and then we'll see you in a month. And it's nice to meet you. Pleasure to have you on
The
board.
SWIP comment, any prospect on when we should be getting the first
Yeah, the heat
review
is on,
comments for
that's
the
right.
Early
SWIP?
next week.
Early next week?
Whole
Here, yeah.
consultants are all
Yeah, this
squirming
whole
over
table
here.
is busy with our friends. It's great, it's great. And,
Well, vacation time is over, right?
That's what we like, throw the
That's right.
pressure back.
Yeah, well, you know,
We're good.
Okay.
No, that's good. That's good. You got to push.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
good to see you.
The next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for Salt Point Solar. The applicants are seeking approval for a solar farm, which would be site plan and special use permit located at 525 Salt Point Turnpike. Again, that's the technical address. We would think of it ourselves as being more on East Dorsey, where the proposed entrance is planned. Making a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
In the interim, we had some new information. If you recall, we gave this negative declaration earlier. The applicants had worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to go beyond what we had looked at the time. We then got the information, we got the actual study they used. We hired an environmental consultant from AKRF. We received his report. In it, he said that he agreed with the methodology of the telemetry study for Indiana bats, but northern long-eared, he said forage within the forest edge, and all the sound equipment, measuring equipment was actually done in the open area, which is where Indiana and many bats actually like to forage as well, because there's more insects. So his suggestion was that we limit tree clearing to from June the 1st to July 31st, which is the roosting period for the northern long-eared bat. The applicants accepted that, and so I believe we're ready to take action tonight, but let me first start. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I just like to say I've enjoyed working with this board. I commend the board's diligence through this application review. Yeah, we have responded to your requests. There was the meeting with the town supervisor, Rohr, to discuss or to address any questions they had about decommissioning, about the pilot. So
I will add that they are taking our recommendation that they're not going to require bonding. They're going to require the applicant to enter into a security agreement, similar to what we've done in other locations, where if they fail to do what they're supposed to do in the decommissioning, then the town can undertake it and add it to the taxes on the property.
Okay, good.
So again, because this is a life of 25 years, it seems silly to require a bond that has to be reviewed constantly. In that same meeting, I was fortunate to attend. We had our new assessor and I guess deputy assessor, who were actually fairly familiar with valuing, how to value these. Just as an aside, typically you value commercial sites by the income stream that's generated. But in this case, the income stream is electricity, which is, if you tax it too much, is going to make it's costing more to the users. And in many businesses, you have appreciation of the value of a building on site, et cetera. They don't have any of that per se really here. The equipment really depreciates over time. So they had proposed using as a bench line NYSERDA's guidelines for how to assess and what the pilot would be. They proposed a pilot that it's up to the town board, but they were able to show that they have completed successfully a pilot for another application that happens to be within Hyde Park Central School District. HPCSD signed off on that amount. And interestingly, the town requested a pilot, the county did not. The time period to request a pilot by the county lapsed, so they're not going to get anything. And the applicants have, in my opinion, generously offered to pay to the town both what the town would get as well as the county. If we recall, when you pay taxes, about 76%, 74 to 76 goes to the schools, and the remaining is split between the town and the county. So I think that they're providing, actually, I saw a smile on the town board's faces, or the town board's representatives there. So I anticipate that while this will be a condition in our resolution tonight, I think that that'll be resolved fairly quickly. I'm glad to say that that seems to be the case. So, and by the way, do you want to state your name for the record? I met you, of course, nobody else has here at the meeting.
Hi, I'm Doug Warden with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder here tonight on behalf of Cypress Creek. I'm outside counsel.
So, anything else? You don't want to add anything else? Anything the consultants want to add? Yes.
Just that, I think this is the first big application under the new solar law, and I think the applicant was very responsive, and the board worked really hard to deal with what were the necessary details. So it's nice to see this possibly coming to a close.
And as a reminder to the board, you haven't seen it, but we've already had fees paid for either 3 or 4, depending on how you count it, new applications for solar. Ms. Moss rejected the plans because they were not administratively complete, which is why you haven't seen them yet. But they should be coming shortly, I believe. So, Cynthia's shrugging. Well, they're working on them. So what we've learned here, in other words, will benefit other applicants. And it'll also help, I believe, the town board in coming through with the decommissioning plan, et cetera, and the pilot, too. So any other comments from consultants? Any comments from the board?
Nope.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? There being none, making a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
And who has this resolution?
I do.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
So anticlimactic now.
Ready?
Brent?
Resolution to amend a negative declaration and to grant site plan and special use permit approval to Salt Point Solar. Resolution 2018-01B. Whereas, 14 times. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617-7 parentheses E, the planning board hereby amends the negative declaration and notice of determination of significance of July 18, 2018 to include additional information regarding protective measures relating to the project's impact on animals, and finds that the project as proposed will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. The
Sorry. I thought you were done.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, forget it.
Got 14
gave it
more
to
to
me.
go.
Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby directs the secretary to the planning board to send the attached amended notice of determination of significance to the environmental notice bulletin for publication and to make all other required filings. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby approves the site plan and special use permit application for the project as shown on the site plan and authorizes the chair or his authorized designatee to sign the site plan set after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payment of all fees in escrow. 2, approval by the town board of removal bond pursuant to town code 130-81 parentheses L parentheses 4, or alternatively, approval and execution of the town board of a decommissioning agreement with the applicant for the project. Such removal bond or decommissioning agreement is to be based on disassembly, disposal, and site restoration cost, only excluding salvage value. Proof 3, proof of installation of a sitting bench in Peach Hill Park, and evidence that the educational materials relating to solar power have been provided to the Friends of Peach Hill Park for installation by the Friends. 4, revision of the site plan sheet C-500 to confirm that the, quote, access gate and fence detail, unquote, with a reference to the 9.5 Schedule 40 round and corner post, unquote, is meant for a 7-foot black PVC coated chain link fence. 5, revision of the stormwater maintenance easements depicted on the site plan to add labels with pointers to the easement lines around the full extent of the respective infiltration basins and surrounding base areas. 6, receipt of the New York State Department of Transportation approval for the installation of utility poles and the gravel access drive into Salt Point Turnpike. 7, revision of the site plan to include a gate at the southern end of the primary gravel access drive at the southern lot line. 8, receipt of a driveway opening permit from the Hyde Park Highway Department for the access drive opening along East Dorsey Lane. 9, submission of a revised stormwater pollution prevention plan, including final infiltration testing to verify that the design infiltration rates of the proposed basins in accordance with Appendix D of the Stormwater Management Design Manual, and receipt of a stormwater management permit from the Town of Hyde Park Zoning Administrator. 10, proof of recordation with the Dutchess County Clerk of the approved stormwater easement and maintenance agreement, along with mets and bounds, descriptions subject to approval in form and substance by the Planning Board's consulting engineer and attorney. 11, revision of the site plan sheet C-200 to include a note stating, quote, the path beyond the Hall Road gate at the southern end of the property is not to be used as a through road, unquote. 12, revision of site plan sheet C-200 to include a note stating, quote, access points must be appropriately stabilized and maintained at a grade of less than 15%. 13, revision of site plan to contain the following note. Tree clearing is prohibited between June 1st and July 31st annually. 14, revision of the site plan to contain the following note. If the silk fence is not installed prior to April 15th, the applicant shall have a turtle monitor on site prior to any disturbance until such time as the silk fence is completed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Will you have a copy of the resolution, right?
We have draft copies, I don't think it's changed much.
I don't believe it's.
I think we're good.
The only thing we changed was I added.
There was a few words that the consultants changed, but
Right.
nothing substantive.
Nothing substantive, but you're welcome to have mine if you'd like it.
Just looking for clarification, first of all, we are proud of the measures we've made with Peach Hill Park, Friends of Peach Hill Park. I actually invited them to come tonight, but they couldn't make it. But we're proud that we put together a sign that I believe Mr. Dupree and the rest of the board has seen. That was actually partially designed by the Friends of Peach Hill Park, and it has their full approval.
That's why it looks like it does.
Okay. It's beautiful.
But I do want to, for the third condition, the installation of park bench and educational materials, we also discussed donating a pollinator meadow.
Oh, right.
Will that hold up? Is that educational materials or?
No, we didn't put that in there because it would be difficult, since it's an off-site improvement
Yeah.
that you're
Right.
proposing, that it's not really required by mitigation through seeker. We didn't know exactly how to describe where you were going to put it, et cetera. I didn't want to get into metes and bounds of saying it has to
Okay.
go within these lines, so that's something that's just voluntary between you and the Friends of Peach Hill Park. I think it's a great thing you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Great.
I really do. I know it's going to help. It's going to help with the education interpretive materials that they're trying to offer for why the pollinators can help the orchards, et cetera. But it's not something that we're requiring. It's just whether you want to do it or not.
Right, it's, otherwise we'd have to work with them and you'd have to plant the field, and we'd have to have a location
yeah.
all before you could get your approval.
We were trying to
That's-
make it easier for you.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking for clarification. So we'll make sure we're working on the bench and the educational sign within the next month or so.
And we put installation by them since we can't require you
That's true.
to really install it.
We inquired of installation. They said the Friends of Beach Hill Park will install.
And the bench is very easy to install because they can just place it on the ground.
I believe
That's
so.
really easy. So-
Voila.
And the sign, I know, has to be staked down inside the ground as well. But
Mhm.
I didn't realize they designed it. And now I understand because it matches so well with their others. I thought, how did you guys do that? So, and I know it seems aimed at children because that's what it's trying to educate is the younger generation about why you have solar farms appearing in meadowlands and woodlands. So I think actually this is a win-win for everybody.
Yep,
I hope it is.
We aim to please.
Yeah.
Yep.
So good, you'll be working through the conditions, and as soon as you're done, I'll be able to sign and you can get going.
Okay.
Thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
The next item on the agenda is a workshop. We're now out of public hearing mode. The first item is Asahi Shuzo Sake Brewery. This is, the applicants are seeking site plan approval to repurpose the existing and former Stop and Shop, before that ShopRite grocery store located at 5 St. Andrews Road, into a sake brewery with the addition of a rice polishing plant and a wastewater treatment facility. Mr. Zarin, welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back, and hope everyone had a nice summer. And
It flew by, as they say.
Oh, my Lord.
Particularly for us who were stuck up here in August where it was either
Oh,
too hot to get out or too rainy to get out and then too cool to get out. So August seems to flow, and we seem to be having the last gasp of summer today with the heat that we're having now in September. We met without you at the last meeting. We had some revisions. Just to briefly summarize those, in the more recent small submission, we have the benches added in the locations as specified. And you made a couple of other changes as well, so we appreciate that. That was all based on our discussion, our requests. So let me turn it over to you guys. Do you have anything new to add tonight?
okay, well, thank you. I did hear it was a good and constructive meeting. So today we'd like to follow up. One, Pelly Clark received literally today the new signed off materials from Japan, and we wanted you all to be the first to see it. They're in free form. Did not have enough time to put them on the boards and label them, but we will have them labeled and boarded for the next meeting and submitted to you to be part of the record. But Dave Kuhn will present those tonight. Also, we've prepared the additional elevations per your request. And Dave will also present those. We also have hard copies for each of you to look at. We tried to be responsive and sensitive to the issues that have been raised regarding the wall treatment throughout. Also, at this meeting, per our August 20th letter and also supplemented August 31st, we are requesting a waiver on the main brewery building to allow the maximum waiver of up to 24 inches based on the distance of that sign from the highway. We will still require a variance of 1 3/4 inches in width and 7 3/4 in height, and would request a positive recommendation from this board on that. We will be going before the ZBA on September 26th, and we will be making a final filing with them on the 12th. In accordance with that, we're also asking for a recommendation on the variances that we're seeking on the 2 freestanding signs. We're now having 3 signs. Those are, there's no waiver requirement, unfortunately. Those are now 24 inches in height, and we're asking for a 14-inch variance from those. There'll be one at the entrance of St. Andrews and one at the corner on Route 9. Those will be the 2 messaging of the with Japanese symbols and designs and the like. And we're also asking tonight respectfully for a recommendation on the variance that we'll be seeking on moving the waste treatment plant, per your request, north behind the building, or behind the building on the level of ground. So, we just wanted to bring the board up to date with submission on, we received two comment letters from Morris Associates, both dated August 23rd, one on general comments on the site plan and one on the SWIP. In advance of the October 3rd meeting, we will revise the site plans to reflect all of those changes, as well as we will try to get a revised SWIP to the consultants early next week and hopefully get some feedback and then submit it to you by the submission date of September 18th in advance of your October 3rd meeting. And hope at that point we will have pretty much an approvable SWIP. So with that said, unless there are any questions, and then hopefully...
No questions, just I wanted to just reiterate the recommendations were prepared and sent out to the board earlier. I wrote it actually Monday, but forgot to send it out until this morning. But we do make positive recommendations. Also, it's not really a variance, we're relaxing a dimensional standard, I believe, is how the resolution, the code is written. And we have that resolution prepared. We also have a resolution prepared to conclude seeker tonight, because you'll need to have seeker done before you can get your variances for the ZBA. So that noted, I also want to give Mr. Tabor, your associate, a shout out. He ran the meeting quite well last time, and I haven't really seen an applicant argue that well for an increase in a while. You put some thought into it, and it was very persuasive. Congratulations.
I just want to state I really appreciate that. It's always nice to hear, and I can now go on vacation permanently.
Well, I sometimes
that's
have
great.
I often have to come up with my own or our own rationale to justify this, because people are like, we just want it.
Right.
And if we're trying to help, then we come up with rationale, but I could freely borrow from someone else's thoughts, which makes it very
So
easy
much
to write the
easier.
recommendation, seriously. So, at any rate.
You're lucky people to have Ted be in Ted's head and have his
Yes.
thoughts, because he's got a lot of very interesting thoughts. Don't limit it to
we won't
this.
tap
Feel
all,
free
not
to.
all of them. No. So, Mr. Kuhn, you want to go ahead and do your
Go ahead,
presentation?
yes. But thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
As Mr. Zarin said, we got the box from Japan this morning. The good news is that everything that we showed you last month has been approved and accepted by the chairman and the president. The very good news is I have a few new things to show tonight, and particularly pursuant to a comment that you made last month, Ms. Dexter. A material that they would like to use now on the rice polishing building is a material called yakisuji,
Yeah.
which is it's not charred, it's not burned, I think it is probably sandblasted and then stained and sanded.
Much better.
So
Not as good, but better.
it's getting there.
In fact, you can eat it, too.
It's going to give the impression of being charred.
Right.
That's in the
Yeah,
part.
and it's that is a Japanese sample that we got this morning that we have to match. We found a millwork company in Austin, Texas by the name of Delta Millworks, and so the gentleman at Delta is going to be in our office on October 3rd. And he would have been the one to make the chard. You can look him up on the internet. Their stuff's pretty interesting. So he's going to come up and work with us, and
The texture's gorgeous.
it is beautiful.
Yeah, it's really handsome.
And I don't know what it costs yet. I don't know if it's going to save any money, but we'll figure it out.
I have a confession to make. I'm familiar with Delta. A girlfriend of mine who just purchased property up here, she redesigns houses for a living. And when I was saying that we're going to have charred wood, she said, "You have people who do that in New York?" And I said, "I don't know why." And she said, "Because I think it comes out of Austin. I know the company."
Yep, that's
She
it.
said, "You were there with me when we were looking at some materials." And I went, "Well, maybe there's got to be somebody who would do it in New York." No?
Yeah.
It really does all
There,
come
there,
from
there are
Austin?
two people that we found in the United States, Delta and somebody else, but Delta had the better website, and they sort of got back to us quicker and jumped right onto the project. So we were actually talking to them about the charred product as well.
The materials
So-
being used in a lot of, Austin is encouraging smaller buildings within, they're having a density issue, so they're encouraging accessory structures inside people's backyards.
Mhm.
And since a lot of these houses were built in the 60s, they're trying to go with a retro mod look, and that's now part of it. A lot of glazing, a lot of steel.
Yeah.
It's the Austin look, so, but that's fascinating to me that that's would be one of only two places. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, sorry.
Nope. This is the material that came from Japan for us to match for the wood that goes on the walls behind the Ingawa, on the back of the Ingawa. So that will work with the Douglas fir that's on the Ingawa that wraps the beams and the columns. And the other thing that we're going to try to do is the rice polishing building is clad in a cement fiber board, which comes smooth, but the Japanese have asked us to try and texture it with so they've sent these samples, and we're going to talk to some companies and try and figure out whether it's a screed on plaster or whether it's a paint or something that has a texture to it. So that will be nice. That will catch the light a little bit. So pass those around. The last two things that are new, they picked some colors. This is Benjamin Moore OC17 White Dove, which will be the color of the rice polishing building and the brewery building. And I don't know if I should say this in Hyde Park, but this is Van Buren Brown, HC70.
We like more. Okay.
Maybe I'll look for a brown that's close.
No,
that
that's an historic color.
different
I actually
presidential
use
color.
that color. It's a nice color.
So that will be the aluminum curtain wall and all the windows, so the windows and the louvers in the rice polishing building, the large windows down here, and then the window wall here will all be painted that brown. So the other thing we have tonight, I just have 4 copies of these renderings. We had 4 new renderings made. Most importantly, per your request, we had the main view that goes on the title block of the drawing set updated.
Oh, are they helping?
There's one of each.
There's one of each in each of the 4 piles.
4 sets.
4 sets.
4 sets.
4 renderings, 4 sets.
And this
4 sets of 4.
There you go. All right,
So in this
sorry.
one, we get the idea that this would create the articulation.
Yes. So this, I can assure you, I've already turned this into black and white and put this on the title block of the drawing set. So every drawing set that is released from here on out has this updated image. This is the view from the parking lot, the south visitors parking lot, looking at the brewery with the scrim of the birch trees and the Japanese maples. And then the next 2 are a with and without. It's the same view looking at the west-facing facade, the main facade of the brewery. What we had Reed Hildebrand do is run the rendering with the birch thicket turned on. These are Japanese maples. These are cherry trees, of course. This is the meadow, grass, and then underneath where the birch thickets are will be vinca, ground cover.
And were there proposed seating areas in through?
There are tables and chairs underneath the Ingawa, and then, I guess, outside of the Ingawa, but before the sidewalk, there are 2 terraces.
Right.
And they will be, now, they'll be wooden decks. So they elected to turn those 2 seating areas into deck areas made of the Akoya wood, and that will match the material that's on the stage, that the stage is made out of.
And wasn't it supposed to be a bench near the rice?
David, do you want to?
It's 4. It's 4.
What's that? Yeah, the south wall has seating areas as well underneath the Ngawa, and then the seating area extends another 65 feet beyond the Ngawa on the south.
I thought it was supposed to be something closer to the Rice Building. Am I remembering it wrong?
There are, what this rendering shows is a bench in the bike rack that we added at the bus drop area, and then we added a bench out towards Rice Polishing Building.
That's,
Yeah,
right. So as someone that might not be able to walk
That's
the
right.
whole time.
That's right.
Okay.
So based on the last meeting, I believe we added 2 benches. One on the sort of loping path that goes out to Rice Polishing, and another one right at the drop-off.
Got a lot of those.
So we had some confusion up here as to the proper sequencing of the images.
Is that with the landscape thicket?
I should have numbered them.
The one with the landscape thicket, right?
I have that, it's that one.
Yes, that's one.
That's one. Thank
That's
you. Okay.
Got it? So that's what we have for you this evening.
Wow.
Thank you, that's quite a lot. And so, no one from the television audience can see this, but that's with the thickets, that's without. So this shows you.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Let me start with consultants' comments. Ms. Axelson?
Yeah, I had been satisfied because that bench was put on the, along the pathway. I'm sorry, I'm a stickler for those kinds of things. I have a few seniors in my life. And then, yeah, myself included, I guess. So I elaborated a little bit more on access type commentary, and I just was a little bit more directive in my comments. I hope that they were pretty clear. So a lot of my comments are kind of technical clarification type things. And, right, a lot of lighting comments, but again, there was the bollard that was used for the Azarian Plaza, and I didn't see that incorporated yet.
Yeah, that is the one that we'll be using.
Okay.
It's also utilized at the sidewalk they're connecting to on the other sidewalk, Farm Lane sidewalk.
And I did look at the cut sheets, but I was bouncing back and forth between plan sheets, and I'm guessing that your team will get to a point where you'll figure out this is where the lighting is going to be shown, and this other plan is just going to have the lighting schematically, so there isn't. So there's a little more clarity.
That's actually one of the most difficult things to coordinate.
I understand
is
that.
lighting.
I
Because it
understand.
appears on architectural, electrical engineering, and civil.
And they are very detailed plans. I guess what I would suggest at this point, since they're fairly technical comments, that when you're getting ready to put together your next submittal, if we could have some offline consultation if you need that. Conference call.
Did we send you the catalog cuts of the bollard fixture?
Yes.
We did? Okay.
Michael sent them previously.
And those are, no, it's fine. Those are really my main comments. Again, so many of them are kind of technical. It's just a matter of pulling the plans together so we get to the point where there are fewer things to incorporate in a resolution of conditional approval when we get to that point.
We've sort of been receiving some things piecemeal because of the way, the nature of having to be approved by the
Long distance.
the owners in Japan, et cetera. So I think that's just the nature of the game, is that there might be some catch-up at the end to coordinate everything. But I don't think that's anything onerous. I hope it's not. Good.
I don't think so.
Mr. Sotero, any comments?
Well, we have some SWIP comments, but, I think that most of them are pretty, minor, just, dotting i's and crossing t's, cleaning up some of the verbiage. So I don't foresee any of that being an issue. Again, we'll work closely with your office as we always do. Just a curiosity as far as DEC and the wastewater treatment plan and county health department and Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, any kind of an update?
We're still in the process of collecting water samples from Japan.
If you're facing him, the microphone's not picking you up.
Still in the process of collecting water samples from the wastewater treatment plant in Japan to submit to DEC so they can give us a discharge standard that we have to meet for the wastewater plant. Recall the floods knocked out their wastewater plant, so that was delayed. We think we're going to have the last sample next Friday, 14th. So that'll go into DEC. Then they'll give us a discharge standard we have to meet, and we can proceed with the design of the plant. So that's really where we are with that.
And as far as the water authority, is there any,
We've
I
corresponded.
know you have a
with-
line there now already serving.
The only thing, they actually don't even need to do an approval.
I was
They just
gonna-
want to, they just want a backflow preventer.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, good.
But they don't have a plan approval here. We're not making potable water for the public. It's processed water, so
Right.
they don't do an approval. for
Right,
this.
okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
In terms of the DEC, the Speedies permit, I'm hoping I'm not opening up a can of worms, but I know that Mr. Sotero had reached out to someone over on your side, maybe you, Mr. Messenger, about the possibility of tying into the
Yeah.
wastewater treatment facility at Bellafield. His concern was strictly that DEC might not allow two discharges in the same, so close.
Well, we'll find out, but we think, because they're going to tell us very shortly. But we think they will, that we think the stream has the assimilative capacity. That's the whole point of them telling us a discharge standard that we have to meet. And they'll take into account that they have another plant downstream. It's a totally different waste stream.
It is.
The one is sanitary, and this is, process.
Process,
right.
that's correct,
And,
right.
and judging from what we've seen, at least from the Japanese plant, it's a pretty clean stream. I mean, they clean it up so that it's not a difficult stream.
Now,
I actually just mentioned this because I wanted the board to make sure the board was aware that in case there was a problem with DEC and that you need to connect them, this might be coming back before us or something, that's all.
Yeah, they're aware of it. That's really the whole point of the first preliminary step, is for them to say, we know what else is going into the stream. Here's the capacity of the stream. Here's what we want you to meet. So.
Thank you.
okay, the other thing is, being that the wastewater treatment plant was moved to, a better area, is that within the 100-foot stream, buffer?
Yes, and we
now?
have, the recommendations already been prepared for them to do the incursion, and they've already measured the incursion
Okay.
for the minimum variance.
Oh, we already have that? Sorry, I'm a little behind.
It's okay.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I mean, we were bound to sort of make that recommendation because it was in our
Right, of course.
request. Would there be, is someone allowed to speak tonight for legal comments?
No comments at the moment. They're addressing most things we've said. We're happy that this is moving along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then let me start back to my inner right. Ms. Dexter, any comments?
Oh, goodness. I thank you for these drawings. It does help to visualize what you were trying to describe. It's very helpful, much easier than looking down on the flat outline. But I was hoping that we could see some alternates. We had asked specifically just for alternates, just to see if there were any other outside landscaping, architectural things that could be done. This is one proposal, to have your two jut out patio type things, and then you have your landscaping around it. And I mean, it is beautiful. That one shot where you have the thicket in full, the one on the bottom there is like, there's no building there. So I get it, but we were asking to see some, I mean, at this point, even just one alternate. What is something else that you could do using the outside, the verandas and porches and things like that, just to break it up and to try to become, more code compliant? And I thought we had been clear about asking for alternates. So, but this is something to look at. It's hard to comment when you just see it for the first time, but they are very beautiful.
I always warn people not to comment when we get things handed to us, because occasionally we've said, wow, that looks great, and then look more closely and said, there's problems, and the applicants say, you said at the last meeting it looked great. So, no comments. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Try to refrain
I
from
like any
commenting.
kind of a rendition. I mean, the graphics that we can do these days are awesome. But yeah, I was hoping to see an alternate.
And I believe, if I can go back a couple of meetings in my head, the discussion was just to say something on onion skin overlay.
Yeah, nothing to this
Or
level,
something that
just,
could be emailed to us in PDF, something light, if that's still what everyone wants.
well, I mean, I can see what they've done, I get the idea of what they're doing, but I had asked for some alternates, just because there's a million different ways to configure outside spaces.
Well, let me start with, it's a very difficult process for us to get alternates. Every proposal that we submit goes through this, and I think we've described it to you before, a pretty extensive vetting with the Japanese architect, with the company and the like. They don't deal in sort of contingencies or hypotheticals. So each alternate, if we were to present alternates, it's very difficult for us to present you anything sort of like a conceptual overlay. It will go through an entire vetting before we can present it, and then it becomes, if I describe to you the type of emails I get, why is this being presented? Are we committing to this? What's the, it's very difficult for them to understand that we're going to present 3 or 4, so.
They also need to know the cost of everything.
Yeah, it's a difficult process. We push them to get this and to ask for sort of additional hypotheticals, alternates, conceptual hypotheticals. I'm just saying, you know, we can try again. I'm just telling you, we did reach out. We did, whenever we get comments, we do minutes. In those minutes, we verbatim almost the comments, and we make summaries to them. Then we have phone call and conferences with the architects, and the architects go back and confer with the clients or the company. Then the company comes. It's
Right.
It's a process. That's so we will try again. We were hoping that we captured. You know, we've sort of been through a couple of iterations with you all, I think, to get to this point. We thought we captured what you had requested. It took us a lot to get formal sign-off on this, as that this is a plan that we can present.
Right.
We can't present to you hypothetical plans. They will not allow that. It has to be a plan that they've signed off on, they've costed and everything before they'll allow us to present it. So I just share. I don't expect you to.
No, I understand. I do
just
get the complexities,
being
plus not
transparent.
to mention, of course, they had some physical weather issues also. So all of the architectural work, including landscaping, all that stuff is being done out of the Japan?
No, it gets done. We do it here.
You do it here.
Then it goes to
And then it goes through this vetting process.
Japanese architects, and the Japanese architects facilitate with the company.
Right.
Then the company gives them their comments,
Right.
and they give us their
Okay.
comments. Then it's a
Right.
process. And look,
Okay.
it's a legitimate request, and again, we'll make it again. But I think we got to a point. We had hoped we got to a point that we were being responsive. I would just ask for your indulgence of this. If you like it, I would hope that you could sign off on it at this point. It would make life a lot easier for
I appreciate your comments. I do appreciate your comments.
I'm just being transparent, that's.
Yep, no, I understand. And I'm just trying to, do my job.
Yeah, understood.
That's all.
Understood.
Anything else, Ann?
Nope.
Great comments. Mr. Oliver?
Thank you for providing these conceptual renderings. They do help visualize some of the ideas that you had brought before us at the last meeting with the different landscaping and the seating areas. I do appreciate that. I would have to agree with my colleague, Ms. Dexter, on the additional renderings to try to just show us what something would look like that does comply with some major components of our code. And I understand all the communication issues and the different channels you guys have to go through, and I would just hope that you understand our position up here, being that we've been asking for these for, I can remember at least 3 months, I believe, and I understand there's been some weather issues, and I I do see that you guys are doing different landscaping choices to try to bring things to light, but I don't see the idea of saying, hey, this is changing the roof line, or this is doing that. Not that we would necessarily want that, but that's what we're looking for with that additional rendering.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. I thought we had pretty much changed and showed the roof line and the site and showed the angles, and that the roof line was pretty much put to rest. I understood the attenuation and the,
Maybe that was just my comment.
okay, as far as the breakup of the wall and the like. And I thought, to your point, I mean, I thought what we were asked to do is to, in my notes, to try to create outdoor treatments rather than, we're not breaking up the wall.
Right.
We're not structurally going to do that. They have already told us they will not do that.
There's no practical reason to do it.
It's
Just talking about practicality.
I mean,
For the brewery that they're going to run, there's no reason for them to break through or modify the exterior walls.
And we were told, you know, you had made the point, you said, okay, we appreciate that, so try to create outdoor treatments that would have the effect both with the landscaping and outdoor sitting and other open space or congregation, which is what we did. We put, maybe, David, can you describe those? I mean,
just to interject for a minute, there was a application before us, a bank, small bank, I don't know, maybe a year ago. It had no practicality for the improvements we required them to do and look at. And we went through extensive details with changing the facade, the roof line, everything to, be more in line with our code. Not that there was any, practicality to it other than the design aesthetics. And again, I think it's beautiful. It's just, we did ask for something months ago that I don't believe we've seen.
And let me leap in here and say that one alternate was suggested was to provide, instead of articulating the building by breaking up the facade, to add something, outdoor green rooms. That was one alternative that was proposed. I know, because I suggested it after you kind of led me there. But I believe what you're hearing is that something that, since our code, you said there's no practical reason except that our code requires it. What I believe the board was looking at was that if there was something that you could say, well, we could do this and add it on it, they would say, if the majority would say, that makes it ugly, we prefer the clean front line. That's, I believe, what they're looking for. But
exactly.
What it sounds like is you yourselves can't say, here's some ideas without sending it over first.
We can't show you even an onion skin unless the Japanese office has designed it. There's actually one more step in the process than what Michael suggested. The Japanese office, Jun Mitsui, says, okay, I get it, we need to break down the mass of the wall, I'll design something. But then they send it to Mark and I have to detail it and make it into something that's real and buildable, and then we need to have Consigli cost it. And they determine the price of whatever the thing is, whatever the move is. Then it goes back to Jun's office for approval, and if he's okay with it, then he takes it to Iwakuni Prefecture and talks to the president and the chairman about it. And then it works its way all the way back. Nothing can be shown to you guys that hasn't already been pre-approved and the cost is known, because you could say, yes, we like that, we'd like to have that, please.
Mr. Zarin said nothing can be shown that's theoretical. That's more or less what we're talking about.
Right.
yeah,
Put it towards me. Okay, thank you.
Dave, can you, this south wall, could you show the south wall,
Sure.
the view from the south of the south wall?
The one idea that I've had in my head for a while for this south wall, if it will help at all, is if you know the building, all the way at the extreme eastern end of the south wall, there is a staircase and a door and a gas meter and a water main and a chain link fence
Right.
that protects it all. And something that we've been suggesting to Japan is that they design and we figure out how to build some sort of screen wall that will screen all of that stuff. So I give that to you. That's a possibility that I can go back and talk to them and look and say, the south wall really, the bulk needs to be broken down. There is a practical need to screen this stuff that the landscape may or, may not quite do the job that it needs to do. And if we build something that is potentially a different material and, it goes up pretty high and it begins to take this end of the building, which is mostly concrete block, after you get past the 65 feet of outdoor seating area that we added subsequent to just underneath the Ngawa.
But that's the point I'm missing. And Michael, the point that, the comments that we received, I thought were that aside from creating structural changes, that outdoor seating and outdoor areas. So that's what we included, right?
We've added that.
Whole patios out there and seating on the south wall.
You're satisfying me, in case you can't tell. There's 6 other.
So let me, Chris, at least that's, we tried to, we addressed that to be responsive. It's not, I don't want, true, we haven't presented you with 2 or 3 alternatives, but that's an additional outdoor treatment.
And I respect that. I'm not
to address
ignoring
specifically
what
that
you've
issue.
done.
And the issue of, we're not, from a precedent state, we're not necessarily, remember, when we addressed this the first time was July 2nd. So you're right, it's been out there for a couple of months. But remember, our initial response was because of the nature of this wall, because of the pride, because of the landscaping, because of the Japanese traditions, and I'm not talking about the roof and everything, I think we did address that we're essentially asking for a waiver somewhat of those development. We're not saying we are in complete compliance necessarily with maybe what the bank did, but we have added sufficient outdoor treatment and other elements, including all the landscaping, that respectfully, if you look at the wall, I don't think the issue that's the main concern of that development standard, that it appears to be a uniform block, a uniform wall and block that's out of harmony with the other uses around it. I guess respectfully, I'm looking at it, you can't even tell it's a uniform wall.
I understand and I appreciate the building. I guess my point is maybe more vague than this specific site and more than this building. That when we start looking at large, expansive, flat roof buildings and say, okay, now we can break it up with landscaping in the future with other buildings and projects, I don't want to get ourselves into a situation where we haven't even entertained another idea. Although I do appreciate this, and I actually do love the site and what you've done with it. That's the hard part about what I'm saying.
Precedent. When someone else comes before you, you need to be able to justify what you did here as it relates to there. Again, the Ngawa is 30% on that side. 60% on the west wall.
It provides an articulation itself because it comes out.
And it's not an inconsequential, inexpensive element that
not at all.
That I would suggest conforms with the precedent. If you're asking, look, we expect you to treat the walls and so forth, I think you can point to what we did. There's extensive, well-designed, I would submit, not inexpensive architecture and design to specifically address that. So I don't, I don't think it just relies on landscaping as, there's a lot of design and architecture in that. And then the outdoor elements, again, are patios and wood and additional that are, add to that. So
Is it possible to?
understand what you're saying. I don't think you're, I don't mean
And
to
I
be- I
definitely
don't think you're in that
appreciate
position.
everything you guys have done. I'm not,
And I don't think you're in the position where you have to say, it was different, we let them go. I mean, you didn't let us go. There's a lot of money and design in this that you can stand behind.
Michael?
Let me also add quickly, remember, we first discussed the flat roof, and then you changed the pitch so that when you're approaching it, you're not going to see a flat roof. It's in effect hidden because you've raised everything. That's why you can't see the mechanicals any longer. I believe you showed that a while back. That and then the rafters, et cetera. Yes, go
Is
ahead.
it possible to, and I know you have to go through multiple layers, to show a clearer view of the west-looking side closer to the Angowa, so we can see where there are the posts and the tables and chairs?
What I
depth of it, because it is difficult.
understood. This is what I would suggest. Because at our office, we were not able to turn this around in a couple of hours and glue these down. But what I want to do is I want to label each individual piece of material and then key it to colored elevations that we would submit with the board, I suppose, next month. So I think the drawing that you're asking for, which is just the building colored, and you can look at this, and there's a key number on it, and then you go to the drawing and say that's it.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Let me understand what you're asking for.
This is what I'm asking, that if you're standing here, so you're looking down, so you, on the end, standing right next to the main building, so this way you can, so we can see where the depth.
If you're looking north, you mean,
And
as
the
if you're at the
patios.
column?
That's not a, I'm sorry, that's not a colored elevation, that's another rendering.
So you're saying, if I understand, Dan, you're saying if you're standing essentially looking down the wall.
You can see the tables and chairs and the
what you're
people and.
seeing-
Right, yeah.
so you see the
The
ins and
patios.
outs.
Imagine if you're
Right.
standing where
No, I
this
understand.
column is and looking straight north.
Exactly, you're looking
Yeah.
straight down one wall and straight
Yep.
down the other wall.
Yeah, so you can see both. It will, I think it will also help us to
see that it's been
troublesome side of the
attenuated.
board.
And you know what would be also, I think, a worthwhile thing? And then compare it to what the wall looks like now.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be
a
great.
great idea.
You'll see
That's-
the before and
yes.
after,
Yeah.
and you'll see there was
Yep.
amount of
Yep.
work and effort that this board required.
I don't want to cut into Chris. Do you have any?
I just had one
Go
more
ahead.
comment.
Go ahead.
And just to conclude my comments, I really do support things that are good for this town, and I think this is gonna be a great project for the town. I just am always like very based on principles, and the fact that we were asking for it and it wasn't shown is just why I'm reiterating it. But other than that, I love the project, and I do think it'll be great for our town.
Thank you, Chris.
I just want to be clear, I don't think we're going to be able to present alternatives, but I will try to get you that view.
I
because
think that'll
that
help.
view
That will
will
help, yeah.
document what.
The
we're-
before and after.
I do wish, because this is the third time we're bringing it up, no one has ever said, this is not doable. Japan will not do it. And sitting at our side, you ask, you have another meeting, you ask, and there's total silence. Though you're very polite, you go, okay, and you write it down, and then we come back and there's nothing. That does get people frustrated, and needlessly. And I agree with Chris and Ann, I think it's a beautiful project, and I do look forward to seeing the rendition. I would like to ask two quick questions. One, on the Rice Building, were you able to ask them to?
Yes.
Yes.
No, yes, I asked them.
Oh, and did we get an answer?
They said no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just to document, adding the signage back to the rice polishing building.
We should add, the symbol you were looking at was just a placeholder. It
Right,
wasn't ever the sign.
but it will be a symbol, right?
No, they're not.
Not on
On the rice polishing building?
No, but
Or-
even here.
Oh, yeah.
There's-
Yes,
yeah.
as it is there is.
And
That's-
is it going to
That's,
be
that's the
red?
recommendation that we just gave them
not
for the sign, for
Yeah,
that.
well, can you tell them it should be red?
It was never going to be red. That was a placeholder.
I know, but it looked
You mean
dynamic.
on the right?
The
Tell
re-
them they'll make us very,
The red,
I know.
yeah.
that's going to be stainless steel.
Just going to say, it's in our neg deck that actually, part of the mitigation by abutting onto the FDR historic trails from the FDR agricultural operations, the signs actually echo the signs we have at the FDR site. The stainless
Right.
steel signs, there's an echo there, a visual echo, so that's actually included, and that's what these are all going to be, is stainless, so there's not really going to be a color per se, except for gunmetal, so to
They're
speak.
making a
I
big
understand,
mistake.
I understand your confusion, because the drawing did have a red square on
And I
it.
know you said it was a
That they put
placeholder.
on there just to indicate where the sign would be on the building.
Everyone got used to the color. A bit
But
of
it's
vermilion
very
there.
dynamic, and it's very Japanese, too. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Pickett, comments?
Yes, how's the Japanese plant doing? Are they,
I don't think they're back in production yet. It's the wastewater treatment plant that's holding them up. They have to get that back up and running. But they are doing something interesting now. They, instead of all the sake that they had in production, that they were finishing up with, they can't sell it as the real thing, but they're selling it as a special run of sake that maybe it got a little too hot or something, but they're selling it, and then they're giving all of the proceeds to tsunami victims.
oh, that's great. Thank
I saw a picture of a bottle. It's red. It's got a red label. I saw a picture.
Okay.
Pinot Noir.
Thank you for the renderings. I think they look great. The additional ones you're going to provide, you had to provide a picture of the existing one too, so that keep everybody happy. Thank you. The materials look good. I like what you did with the kind of faux wood with burnt wood
Brent,
with
can you
regards
speak
to
into the microphone?
Yeah,
Thank you.
with regards to the the rice polishing building, and also the materials for the young goblet and the outside look great. My question is, we've got I guess we'll call now a thicket that's the cover up for the front. One, what is the timing for the thicket, and over time will it grow up so everything becomes more visible, or?
It's a very good question. I talked to Alex, who's been here before, the landscape architect. I talked to him today just because I wanted to get the story straight. The Japanese maples and the cherry trees and the birch thickets they're all being specified as 3-inch calipers. The birch thickets will take 5 to 10 years to mature. The Japanese maples and the cherry trees are faster growing, and they're specifying trees that will be installed that are 8 to 10 feet tall, if that helps.
Okay.
Which specimens did you say were 3-inch caliper?
The cherry and the
Birch.
Japanese maple
And the birch.
and the birch.
So 3-inch caliber birch will be.
That's pretty big.
Fairly large birch.
Yeah.
I'll double check that.
That's a big birch.
Yeah,
That's a big birch on the rendering.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I would say that's pretty mature. I mean, not full maturity, but you're gonna have a good screen, right?
How tall would that be?
I'd say 12 to 14 feet,
Really?
maybe.
Thank you.
Ms. Weiser?
I'm just really happy with the changes you've made. I think it looks great. I can't wait to see it. Thank you.
Michael,
Yes.
do you mind if I just make a couple
Not at all.
comments? Okay.
Hop right in.
So I'm listening to the conversation, and Chris mentioned precedent, looking ahead, but also looking back after working with this board for quite a few years. every single non-residential development that comes before you on either Route 9G or Route 9, the planning board has really put some serious thought into upgrading the look, even in the case of a site redevelopment. You have an existing building, it's right there. Why do we have to mess with it? We all know Town Center North was a redevelopment of multiple buildings, and the board really, really pushed through multiple architectural concepts to get to the point where the planning board was satisfied with the result for what they had envisioned in that part of town. And I completely appreciate that this is a site redevelopment. I have a very soft spot in my planner heart for redevelopment. So I understand the need to try to, you know, keep costs in a reasonable realm. But I just want to point out that when I did my comments, I'm sorry, is this from you and me, Pete? It's from Pete and I.
If it's bad, no, it's not.
Okay, it's from
They're
me.
they're both from Pete, and one is from Pete and you, the other is from Pete and the reviewer of stormwater.
So it's the August 23rd comments, and it's comment number 1, and I know that the board gave specific commentary in their discussion, but this one very specifically talked about an alternative architectural concept that would be more consistent with the architectural site development standards and zoning section 108-4.5G, particularly regarding large building design and building dimensions, and then I cite more. So I'm just reiterating that the reason that the board is pushing to actually see an architectural concept that's an alternative to this is because it's a consistent practice of the board, one, to, you know, seek to conform to the code that was written for certain objectives, planning objectives the town has, and also because in the past, no matter how large or small a development, the board has really pushed for high-quality architecture, sometimes asking people to break up a facade with some architectural element that just kind of does the trick. So that's all. I'm just kind of reiterating your history.
Thank you. So you've heard a lot tonight. Ironically, it does seem as though there's one side of the table and that side of the table in this case. But we're on the same spot.
Yeah.
We all agree that the architecture has been massively improved. The addition of landscaping, certainly to me, it's one of the images, it's not this one, but where you barely see the western elevation. I can sort of see in through there, behind the birch walls, I can see that there's seating areas and that this complements the building. So to me, it's achieved it to an extent. I think the Ngawa also helps achieve the articulation, but it's up to the applicants to persuade everybody up here, or at least the majority. Not for me to argue against them, because they're all my friends and colleagues. And I respect every one of them, believe me. But I feel like we're pretty much there. It would be my fundamental wish that you could just somehow not look at your contract and say, hey, I'm going to sketch some stuff and send it to just you guys and not anybody else. And we could go, oh, we don't like it, and then we'd all be done. But apparently,
You'd never see me again.
I don't want you to abrogate the terms of your, particularly not with an important client like this. So,
Right.
and I do appreciate that Mr. Zarin has consistently pointed out that, you know, there's sort of a cultural dissonance, we'll call it. We're trying to make the town look more like a New England quaint town, or not New England, at least New York, but, you know, a quaint small town. And the Japanese style, even for quaint small, is still to be clean, linear, et cetera. So I think that we'll all be taking that into consideration as we get to the final vote, as to how we achieve something that's why I like Mr. Tabor's comments. It's like the big ideogram is going to tell it or to advertise to visitors, you know, tourists in particular, hey, this is the sake brewery, because it's not going to just say sign that says sake brewery. They're going to see this big ideogram that's going to relate to tell you what this is as you go by, in other words. And the architecture, the landscaping that's been chosen, very selectively is trying to look Japanese in style. So all of this, what I'm trying to say is, to me, integrates into a very harmonious site that I'm looking forward. Those of us up here get to drive by spaces and already start envisioning them. Believe me, I was looking at our former, where Stop and Shop used to be, which is formerly in Ames. At one point, the Ames site had fallen down, and everyone was discouraged, going, oh my God, this town's going to, you know what. But for those of us who already approved it, we were like, no, no, it's gonna look better. And it reactivated itself. Suddenly, there's only one empty store there now front, whereas there was only, I think, a liquor store.
There was
and
only
and
one store there.
A liquor store, a Radio Shack, and
A dollar store.
yeah, not even a dollar store yet. First, it was the haircutter only. So I see this as a great way to reactivate the site, both for residents and, importantly, for visitors, because the purposes of the TCHD are really supposed to attract tourists, and we don't really see a lot of businesses like that. Most of them are there to service residents, which is fine too. But this is something that will accomplish both, but will certainly enhance our appeal as a visitor's center for the area beyond just the historic sites. This is a commercial one that makes money and provides jobs. So you can tell I'm very praiseworthy for the project. So without further ado, you guys have some things to think about. Get back to us whenever you can. And we have some resolution prepared.
Mike, can I just say
Yes.
one last thing? I just want, because you were saying, you're doing your job and this is important and precedent and everything. I just want you to also know that the people at this table, we have also worked hard to, when they the company went through the value engineering after the flood, and I mean, there were some major proposals to cut back a lot on the exterior conditions, the quality of the materials. I mean, these are all the highest quality, not inexpensive materials and the like. We pretty much fought and said, you can't do that. I mean, if you're gonna find value engineering, find it in the inside, but don't find it on the outside. Don't find it in the exterior, because to this board and to this town, that's what counts. And you've already got them excited, and you've already shown it to them. So,
I mean, I would rather you not spend the money going back and trying to do all this, the complex process it takes for you to design, then it be translated by Jun Matsui, then it go back to you, then it go to a cost considerably, then it go to the Japanese. I'd rather that money go into the materials for the exterior and the landscape. We're getting a lot of bang for the buck here, to me. So that's my personal opinion. But at any rate, I think once we see the visual, right now we're seeing kind of a 2D look. I was just wondering, would it be better, instead of doing an artist rendering like we're doing here, would it be better to do a photo sim, to actually take a shot there and then superimpose what's being done? Would that be easier?
Oh, yeah.
And less costly?
No, everything's costly.
That's true. I shouldn't have said
Everything's
that.
costly.
I shouldn't have said that.
These 4 renderings cost $9,000.
Oh, my God.
Wouldn't a photo sim be cheaper to just take a photo and stick it in? I mean, I don't know how to manipulate
And
photos
Photoshop
like
it,
that.
right? I mean-
Yeah, to add in.
It has to be good to show it to you guys and to get it through my bosses and Jun Matsui and.
Oh, you mean even a photo sim?
Photoshopping
Oh, really?
site photos isn't going to be
Oh, wow.
good
Well,
enough.
if we don't tell them,
What's that?
if we don't tell them,
Like he said, he might not ever be able to come back.
this on
On YouTube. Just look at the comments. You can tell.
Okay, well,
thank
however
you.
you can get us.
But you've
that
asked for an
image, that
additional
image.
rendering image, and we'll produce it.
However we can get that, I think that will help clarify matters more than anything else. In the meantime, we have a resolution adopting a secret determination of non-significance, as well as granting the discretionary bonuses we're allowed to increase the maximum size of any letter or symbol. And who has these?
I do.
Yay, Chris.
Resolution adopting a secret determination of non-significance for Sake Brewery, resolution number 2018-25A. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that for the reasons set forth in parts 1 and 2 of the EAF and the attached notice of determination of significance, the planning board hereby adopts a negative declaration finding that the project as proposed will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby directs Secretary of the Planning Board to send the attached notice of determination to the determination of significance to the environmental notice bulletin for publication and make all the other required filings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. And let's stipulate that we've all read the notices that it's attached. I'll also, just for the record, point out that in the impacts listed, we actually point out that this is an aesthetic upgrade that's proposed because of significance landscaping, et cetera, and the materials. And you also have the second resolution, Chris?
I do. Resolution granting discretionary bonus to increase maximum size of any letter, symbol, or graphic pursuant to Town Code Section 108-24.2 F2, Sake Brewery, Resolution Number 2018-25B. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Section 108-24.2 F2, the board makes the following findings with respect to the requested bonus to permit a maximum letter and symbol height 24 inches for sign C. 1, the additional size of the symbols and letters is appropriate given the sign's distance from the road. The wall sign will be located over 500 feet back from the site's primary access roadway. And 2, the increase in size is appropriate due to the size of the building upon which the sign is being placed. The proposed sign is large enough to be visible from Route 9, but is not distracting due to its use of single color without any borders. The size and location of the proposed sign complements the proposed architecture. Be it further resolved that the board hereby grants the applicant the requested increase to permit a maximum letter and symbol height and width of 24 inches for sign C as shown on sheet A-060 of the site plan set.
Who would like the second? Diane, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries also unanimously. And now may I get a motion, has everyone had a chance to read the
Yep.
recommended? May I get a motion to authorize me to send this
So
over?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So I believe we're scheduled to see you back for the public hearing on October 3rd, but if there's any
Yes.
reason for you to come back in for our next.
October 17th?
October 17th.
October
right.
17th.
If there's any reason for you to come back beforehand, like October 3rd, just let us
We'll
know.
probably be back to
Okay.
show you the renderings.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for explaining everything so thoroughly.
Still with us?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, there are ours.
Those are, yeah.
You can have, I don't want
The next item on the agenda, also workshop, is a new application to the board. Dairy Queen, the applicants are seeking approval for an exterior modification. This is the Dairy Queen located at 4164 Albany Post Road. Welcome back, Mr. Deasing, Mr. Mader. I'm going to turn it all over to you tonight. Tap on it. It's on the bottom. Should it- is it flip?
He might have turned it off, yeah.
Yep. Sounded right.
It should be on. There you go.
Okay, we're in motion. All right. I'm Jay Deasing, Maury Architects, here with John Mader from Dairy Queen and Chaz Willis. He's also from Dairy Queen Corporate. And we're proposing a renovation to the existing Dairy Queen on Route 9. So our
Can you hold the
proposal,
microphone?
our proposal tonight includes enclosing the existing front porch that's on the building, and that'll become an indoor ordering area. And we're also proposing to renovate the exterior of the facade of the building. As far as any changes on the overall site plan, we're really not changing anything besides enclosing the front, and we're also moving the menu board for the drive-up traffic, so it can be better, is better visible for the car traffic. The facade of the building, so we're going to finish the base of the building with a cultured stone veneer, and then we're adding a vertical accent wall, which will also have the stone. From the wainscot height of the stone up to the roof line is a ephes stucco material. It's a beige color. There's an accent band that runs around the building, and that'll have a LED accent light strip in it. And then from that accent band up, the roof will be finished in a like a rusty orange siding panel. We have new signage proposed for the building. There's currently a sign on the Route 9 side, the west side, and then one on the south side. So we're just going to be replacing the one on the Route 9 side. The one on the south will be eliminated. And then we also have our monument sign out by the road, so that will remain, and we'll put new signage on that monument. So I also have a colored picture of a similar store that was redone not long ago, if it helps the board visualize. I know the chairman sent an email around a few days back about the lighting and what that would look like on the outside, so I thought I would bring another visual that you could take a look at.
Where was this?
This one, do you know where this one is?
That is in,
Can you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
sorry, that is in East Northport, Long Island.
Okay. This is the one in Wappingers.
Yeah, the one in Wappingers, the light,
Oh, yeah.
there's light trespass. The light goes up. I was just there the other night. It doesn't really focus on just the wall. It goes right up into the sky. So
So-
when you're showing us, has downlights.
Correct. The one in Wappingers, off the record, they weren't supposed to install those lights, so we're not proposing
And without
lights.
There are
permission?
some that go up.
And without permission?
There are still some
Yeah.
that go up.
Yeah, we're not proposing any uplights on the building. It's just the LED accent stripe around the perimeter. So basically, that's an overview of our project before you tonight, and we certainly look forward to any questions or comments you might have.
So, thank you. As everyone knows, you at least, I shouldn't say everyone knows, everyone should have received a copy of an email. I had sent Mr. Deasing just some quick comments that we had from our agenda meeting, and he gave a response to each one. One of the things I should have elaborated more on when I said a sign package. Ms. Moss, that's a sign, that's a sign. You need to have an overall sign calculation for what you're allowed. That your total signage that's allowed is based on this linear square footage. So she just wants to make sure that you're not exceeding the allowed amount, the amount totally allowed. Under our code, when you have an uneven shape like this, she's required to draw a geometric angle around it to determine what the area is.
Yeah, so we drew a rectangular shape around that sign as 37.4
Right.
square
It's-
feet.
I don't think these were included in your total, that's all.
They weren't.
That's all.
Okay.
I should have clarified that when I said that, I'm sorry. And
Understood.
in addition, as you know, in the plans we received, these are described as internally lit, which is not allowed by code, so that would be a use variance from the ZBA. Mr. Deasing clarified that they're not going to be internally lit, so they would be, we don't know how they're going to be lit yet, but I assume by goosenecks or something like that.
Yeah, we thought we'd do a downlight over top of the sign.
Okay.
The monument sign's going to be lit from a ground light looking up.
Which it already is, I believe. And I also asked him about there's a lit plastic ice cream cone. There it is.
Yep.
That's whether that would remain, 'cause it's not shown on the site plan, and because Ms. Moss considers that to be signage too. I don't know how you calculate the area of that.
That's a
It's
free
3D?
form, so, but that's going to be removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let me start over. Ms. Axelson, comments? I know you don't have a memo or anything formally written up
No,
yet.
but we did do a review. Just in terms of layout, I know Pete and I were discussing that the order board, the menu board,
Mhm.
is relocated, so just consider whether that's going to result in any kind of queuing issue. And then I see that you have a nice seating area, and we just need a little more clarity on what's around that. It's apparently like a decorative fence, and it looks nice, just need some more clarity, labeling on the plans, that's about
Okay,
it.
that's just all existing, there's no proposed
Right,
changes to that.
exactly.
So but we can put some notes on it.
Right, and on the zoning table, you'll need to add a row for scale. The existing scale requirement is 65,000 square feet, and I'm sure you don't get close to that, but if you could, it should be in there, and then I think Michael pointed out you've got 2 front yards, so
Yes.
if you can just make sure that in the zoning table, the numbers that you're showing for yards match with what you have labeled on the plan. And otherwise, it's nice to see a shared driveway situation. And then I don't usually comment that much on architecture, but I guess I'm looking at the Dairy Queen building, and it has a non-flat roof line facing the road, and actually kind of a decent roof line. And I know that you're enclosing that order area, whatever, the area where people congregate in order. And I'm wondering, can you just enclose that and keep the rest of the front? Because the thing is, all of a sudden, it looks like there's a sort of a wide stone chimney in front of the building with a flat top, which is sort of contrary to what the zoning law calls for with a roof that is not flat. And I just think that the existing building has a kind of attractive, iconic look to it that the community is used to. It's a little folksy. And that would be my suggestion. I think that column coming up in the front, I appreciate that it's stone, but I really don't think it fits there, and I think it's contrary to zoning, so. The board can discuss architecture a little more, but those are my comments on that.
Thank you, Mr. Sotero.
My only comment was, again, we just looked at the plan quick today, but Liz mentioned about where the order board is, and I understand, I mean, it's in an awkward spot now. I mean, you're really only going to lose one, car in, the queue, by moving it, but you don't really have a lot of area there, for queuing anyways.
Yeah, the bigger problem, Pete, is that it faces away from.
No, I know.
So-
I've ordered there, believe me.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know.
It's hard for people in the second car to be
No,
able to
I,
see
no,
it.
Just make sure everybody speaks in the microphone. Every time people speak that way,
No, but
the
what-
audience can't hear
It's
you
just
watching.
It's
No,
just a
I heard
matter
you.
of-
I heard you. That's
Yeah,
all.
okay. It's just a matter of, people that are sitting in the car behind it can't
can't
see
read
the order board right now.
No,
So we're
understood,
trying to
yeah.
make it so that customers who are complaining about that, or so they can,
Yeah, no, I mean, I
the other
understand.
people can get ready, so we can move the traffic a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, what about that area there that's shown in the back where it says existing vinyl fence and gate? Is there some kind of like a door there, Jay?
Yeah, it's a fence gate.
I mean, I'm just wondering if there's some way that could be reconfigured so that you could keep the menu board where it is, but just angle it, like differently if you didn't have that existing, like the walkway?
So the fence is back here, I think you're referring to.
Yeah.
It's not really impacting the menu board.
Here, let me just get up. It's probably easier.
It's our interactive planning board tonight.
So, I don't know how, like, sacred.
You need a mic.
Microphone.
Sorry. I don't know how sacred that this is here. I mean, whether this board could just be angled at a different, like, direction here, and this could be moved around a little to still get in here. I mean, I know you're really only losing one car in the queue by moving the board over here, but I mean, it does get pretty, like, backed up during heavy periods. So, I mean, I don't know if that's possible to angle the board like this and then move this. Again, I don't know what happens here, so, I mean, if that's something like critical here, but if this could be, moved around a little and this board angled right here to accomplish what you want to accomplish and at least get one more car in the queue. This is something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Any other comments? Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
This comment was already provided to Mr. Deasing, but because this lot shares access with the other lot, and they're both right now in the same ownership, now is the time to get a cross-access easement recorded.
Yes,
So that'll
they're
be something the
willing to
board
do
will be
that.
looking for.
No problem.
That's with himself.
Thank you. Ms. DiNapoli, do you mind if I start with you? Would you rather we?
It's okay.
Okay.
Good evening. First, I want to start with saying that it is always encouraging when we see a longstanding local business wishing to move forward, not only for yourself, but for the community in which you live in. And I want to thank you for your commitment to Hyde Park. And Hyde Park's Dairy Queen is a staple of childhood, many of whom now bring their grandchildren. Times do change, and I appreciate the desire to make updates. But like the town itself, changes are coming, and we must be mindful of the town we are becoming. We must integrate the old with the new and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We must be respectful of our history and blend that into our tomorrow's design. I understand the need and the desire to have year-round business, and to accomplish that, the existing ordering area makes sense. This also allows for some in-site seating for the off-season, and I would think anyone would want that. However, I am concerned with the proposed exterior changes as they do not meet the town's code. And as stated in our code, under architectural features standards, 108-4.5G1A, it states, "No alteration shall significantly alter, remove, or destroy the proportion or detail of any original facade. The proportion and detail of any existing facade shall be maintained when it represents a reasonably accurate example of traditional architecture. This practice of removing or boxing period ornamentation with contemporary siding materials shall be discouraged." I would respectfully suggest keeping the present design and just enclosing the ordering area. This iconic look is what small towns are made of, and it supports the traditional architecture of our town. The new one singular corporate model is not the only way to go, as we have witnessed by the original design of other corporate entities here in Hyde Park. And for your consideration, look at the new Mavis, the McDonald's, and the Dunkin' Donuts along 9. These businesses, with their new design examples of franchises willing to adapt the one corporate model to the town's architecture, by adapting their design to support the town's image, they also show an appreciation of their community. I understand the desire of making the improvements, and I applaud you for that. I think it's necessary, and I do look forward to you enclosing it, but I cannot stress strongly enough that the existing model is Hyde Park's model, and that is something everyone who has lived in this town has grown up with, and that's important. And when you are driving into this town and you see that, it brings back such wonderful, precious memories from childhood. And for tourists who come into this town, and being a former innkeeper, I hate to tell you how many of my guests who, when they arrived, were so excited that they recognized the Dairy Queen. And one of the first things they were going to go to was to line up at Dairy Queen. And I think that's a very important image to maintain. Thank you.
Mr. Oliver?
I also would like to thank you for keeping your business here in Hyde Park and looking to make it better and better serve our community, and do appreciate that. I would also have to agree with my colleague Diane that the new architecture doesn't comply with our town code, and the existing architecture that you have is really, like she said, a staple to this town. And it in small towns, as a planning board or town government, we try to achieve a sense of place, and I think that building really establishes Hyde Park with the Ever-Ready Diner and that kind of stretch of buildings that, you know, that's almost, you know, you're entering into Hyde Park. And if there would be a way that you could achieve the new modern, you know, interior layout that you need with somehow keeping maybe a renovated old style, if that makes any sense. But I think that your current style is really a staple here in Hyde Park. Thank you.
Ms. Dexter?
I have such eloquent colleagues. I can't even match that. I had a different word for the architecture, and it was none of those words. I couldn't come up with a new one, sorry. Again. I think our planner has also hit the point home that flat roofs are not what we're seeking. If you were sitting here before and you heard us with the sake manufacturers who are trying to dress up a huge box with a flat roof, you heard us over and over say that we would wish there was a way to get rid of it. They've been very creative. I would hate to trade in, you know, I'm sorry, I grew up here and this is where I went as a kid, and you just don't see these things like this. If you would like to enclose the front and make it so that it's year-round, that's fine by me. I think that's great. But to basically put it into a box that doesn't even look like Dairy Queen, I wouldn't be able to support it. I would quote the exact same piece of code that just says, no, we can't do this. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Pickett.
I kind of have to ditto my colleagues to the right. And then
We're all on the same table, man.
in looking, taking grandkids there and kids and whatever, many times doesn't seem to be enough seating and whatever. My thoughts were, and I don't know how doable this is, but you know, when you have the drive-through that comes up, I believe it's yeah, right there where you do your ordering, and right now come and exit out here. Would it be, and there's a sharp curb there, and it goes up, you can tell by the blackness of the curb, it goes after tires and everything else. So that needs to be, I think, softened up. Well, what about the potential of having exiting out onto the Water Tower Road and then creating a picnic area up in this area? So to me, just exiting out here is, why have it? You know, you're kind of burning space. Whereas if you could exit out onto the Tower Road, you could create more seating, summertime seating and things like that, which I think you could use.
Yeah, it would be nice if they didn't have to cross traffic in the front of the building to exit.
Right.
I agree with you there. I think probably what we'll find out from traffic people is exiting out here. First, it's going to be difficult to make the turn, and then we're so close to the Route 9 intersection that they'd say that'd be a bit of a safety concern. But I do appreciate your comment about trying to alleviate that in the front, which it's difficult, especially if you have pedestrians crossing to get into the store.
Right.
But I'm not sure.
And now you've got more grass there, you put tables out there, more seating.
Yeah.
That's, right now, is really pretty limited right in there when you've got good summertime crowds, so
Yeah.
that's my input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Weiser?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for your continued investment in the town of Hyde Park. It's always heartening to see businesses thriving in our community, particularly this one. The Dairy Queen holds an important place within the fabric of our town and in every town that has one. It's a place where children's sports teams come to celebrate a win, where birthdays and graduations are commemorated, and where families go after dinner during the hot summer. It's a place where memories are made, and it's an ingrained part of the American landscape. I understand the desire to update and modernize the building and to keep it current with the present corporate branding, but I hope you will consider rethinking the design. If you've had a chance to look at the downtown initiative, you will see that all the proposed architectural styles are traditional and that they provide the sense of an all-American small town. I think it would be a tremendous value to the community if you were to consider retaining the iconic barn-like structure, not just because it fits within the vision of our town's future. The building tends to cultivate pleasant remembrances. And while we were envisioning a bright future, we must not forsake the richness of our past. I have no problem with enclosing the 326 square foot covered outdoor ordering area, and I think it can be done within the framework of the barn. We're just hoping to correct the mistakes of the past by maintaining and promoting historic architectural congruity. I think it's also important to note that the town's revitalization plan has immense public support. If you feel that modernizing the brand will attract a younger crowd, I urge you to take a look at what they are doing. They're buying vinyl, they're wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses from the 1950s, they're growing handlebar mustaches, and yes, they're making artisanal pickles and craft chocolate in Brooklyn. But remember, these are the guys who brought back Pabst Blue Ribbon. As a former television and marketing executive, I feel confident in saying that nostalgia is a strong way to to attract them. Make it a beacon of Dairy Queen's original vision. You could start with brightening up the building by painting it, perhaps a richer red, and add new windows. I would look to the new Mavis for architectural details and embellishments. I spoke to a new neighbor over the weekend who is from Brooklyn, a millennial, and an architect. I asked him what he thought about changing the building, and his response was, "There's nothing wrong with that building." He said that just by making a cleaner and fresher version of itself, he would so go there. Thank you, and I want to let you know how much I appreciate your commitment to Hyde Park.
Okay, so I'll just add that at our first initial meeting, I told you that our zoning does not really envision standard corporate architecture. And it's just so the newer people up here, I'm not sure you're aware, but Mr. Deasing is the one who designed the Dunkin' Donuts that you see that became now a sort of model for the Dunkin' Donuts in this area. We were told that 2 other towns, I don't know if you got to build them, but or to design them, 2 other towns said, we want the Hyde Park Dunkin' Donuts, which is to us a badge of honor and also something that we can sort of look at and say, hey, this doesn't look like the standard thing, because that's what our code envisions. In addition to the section of code that I quoted to you at the very first meeting and that you heard here tonight repeated 3 or 4 times, 108-4.5G1C1 also states, and I mentioned this at that meeting, but I guess you didn't hear or were requesting a waiver, but our code requires that the entrance face the primary corridor, not this. So you're in effect turning your back to Route 9 by not having any kind of entrance. And I'm quoting DC Planning when I say that. They're the ones who are very tough on us if we allow an entrance not on Route 9. And if you're going to ask me about the drugstore that's to the north, that was under an old code. That's the reason why the entrance faces in the back on that side. I would tend to agree with my colleagues. I said at the first meeting, I don't think that the building, the new corporate style matches what we've been trying assiduously to do as a planning board up here for the last decade and a half, which is to improve the aesthetics as well as the functionality of the town. I think that you're improving the functionality, I think, by moving the order board. I've never seen a queuing problem there. It seems most people actually pull in and go in and buy stuff and stay there. I'm not positive. But I've never seen it. We've had queuing problems. We still almost have them, Jay, right at Dunkin' Donuts because it's so popular.
I've seen problems.
Oh,
Yeah. But I mean, we improved the situation where it was before radically because there was, there were cars stuck on Route 9 every day at the old Dunkin' Donuts. It's now run out savings.
It's triple queuing there, and it's gotten to be a problem already.
It's gotten to be a problem.
Yep.
So I want to make sure, I hadn't thought about the moving, I know it's just a car length, and I hadn't thought about it, but I'd like to see some more exploration of making certain that moving the order board does not really cause any conflicts with traffic in the back. I know that corporate, because I talked to you as well, Mr. Willis, that day. I know your corporate philosophy, ethos, unlike McDonald's, Mavis, Dunkin' Donuts, doesn't seem to allow for any kind of modification to local standards.
It's not that. We will work with the local townships, but one of the things that as we were all talking, is this is an iconic image, this is what you're looking for. This is a Dairy Queen image, and 50 years from now, this will be the Dairy Queen image that everyone else in the country is used to. So this wasn't developed by Hyde Park. This came out of our drawings. This is what Dairy Queen was building at that time. So I hear what you're saying, and we definitely understand the history. We are one of the oldest franchise companies out there, and we bank on our history. But it's a new generation, and where my generation, remember this growing up, 90% of the kids growing up today are going to remember this.
Where it's allowed.
It's allowed in...
Where it's allowed. You already told me at the first meeting that in some towns, like ours, they didn't allow that look, and you painted them blue or something else as sort of a...
One town so far, other than this one, out of 42 stores just in the entire Northeast has not allowed it. So we've got 5,000 stores, And you're fine. I'm just saying that this is what the children and what the country is going to think of Dairy Queen moving forward.
Well, when the board says traditional, understand they weren't just talking about traditional Dairy Queen, they're talking about the type of structure,
Right.
and that's
I get
that's
that.
a traditional
I
form.
I was responding to
Yeah.
everyone
I-
saying
Is it
this
just
is
so
an
happens?
iconic Hyde
No,
Park.
it's not, that's not unique to Hyde Park. I mean, I grew up in the South, but every Dairy Queen looked just like that too.
Right.
I mean, it was
That's
all over
what
the
I'm
nation.
saying.
And I can tell you that even where I grew up in Texas and Louisiana, we had gambrel-style roofs because it's farm. And these, Dairy Queen doesn't go into big cities. That's where McDonald's tend to go into. All the DQs I've always seen are kind of like in small towns like ours. I assume that was, back then at least, I'm talking the 60s and 70s, that was sort of a deliberate process because you would never see a Dairy Queen in the middle of Houston, Texas. But you saw a lot of them in Tyler, Texas and all the smaller towns outside. So, but when I say traditional, it's also, people have, whether you change the style from this to something else or not, this alone isn't really cutting it. And I think that Jay, if I can
get
say this,
that.
he did it, I think you did a good job of trying to figure out how to weld the current style, or at least you did a job of how to weld what's there with what's proposed. But it still doesn't seem as though it looks traditional in style anymore. It's kind of a hybrid of something. And the section that they quoted actually talks about boxing in period ornamentation. The gambrel style is also associated with the Dutch, of which this is a former Dutch colony when it was, before New York, when it was New Amsterdam. And we still retain vestiges of the Dutch colonial period. I will also add that, as a last point, I can't seem to get this to go on now. Oh, because I'm hitting the wrong one. Malloy's right next to you. That was the subject of about 6 months of conversation between the applicants and then planning board, because I sat in the audience over what it should look like. And that was a mom and pop or a locally owned drugstore. They had plans and they had actually researched that there had been a building similar to that had burned down, I believe, further back where the
There was a
skating rink
big
was.
gigantic barn right behind it where the antique center is.
And our old code didn't even require that we try to preserve and enhance the historic integrity, the historic resources that we have left. But our code does require that now. And I keep thinking about what I saw in Wappingers, which would now be in a row with what I would see right there with the former Malloy's, now a CVS. And it seems not consonant, not aesthetically balanced, put it that way. Jay, I keep cutting you off, so go ahead.
No problem. I never started, so you really didn't cut me off. So I guess I still want to explore trying to mold these two designs together. The traditional, I think everybody is really focusing on the original gambrel of that structure, if I'm not mistaken. To me, this side of the building with the two little peaks, it's not really that tasteful in my opinion. So, you know, and obviously I have to talk with John and with Chaz about this, but maybe if there's some way to maintain the gambrel, but then also incorporate some other kind of roof around the sides. And I've also talked with them a little bit about alternate materials. So something that Dairy Queen does allow instead of the siding panel is a board and batten type siding. So it's a little bit more traditional. You might like that a bit better, so we can talk about that. And then, you know, between doing that and maybe dressing the columns with a little bit more traditional enclosure as opposed to the kind of plain style that they are right now, maybe some of those improvements in that direction might be a benefit towards meeting your goals.
I don't think this always looks like it was kind of tacked on.
Yeah.
To a traditional style.
Yeah, I know you're probably focusing on this, not so much this.
Well, because it's heavy,
Yeah.
it's sitting on the side, so those could go off. And I thought were placeholders for signs, so that if you're traveling north, you would be able to see signage along the side, that's how that got added. I mean, I don't know, I didn't live here back then, I've only been here 25 years, so that predates me by far. But that is what you're hearing from the board, is just a way to preserve some of the architectural integrity, if I can use that term. And I know it's not unique to Hyde Park, Mr. Willis is right, that's a standard model DQ. There might be a little variation here and there. I want to say the ones I grew up with didn't have quite such a wide porch in front. I think we just stood out in the hot sun to order our dilly bars and DQ sandwiches, et cetera. But I also agree with what two people said, which is I'm trying to envision this big stone plinth now, where it'll even be closer to the road because would be going where basically between the second and, yeah, right there.
Mhm.
And that seems like it would be really dominating the streetscape in a way that that doesn't really enhance the building. It's part of what hides the gambrel roof. I mean, the gambrel roof itself doesn't have to be you could propose a different kind of roof. I'm just thinking you don't want to spend the money to redo all the interior like that. So there's a way to make that still more prominent. I think that, because you've heard from the board, everybody up here wants to see you do well and thanks you for the investment and continuing to be here. It's a matter of trying to get it right, and believe me, this is not easy for us when it comes to architecture because, well actually, Jay's gone through this before with us.
I was going to say, Jay is painfully familiar of what our board, we take it really seriously that when our code was written with that one paragraph in there, it was written for a reason. And it's really to prevent exactly this, where corporate just mandates and says, just blanket this out there regardless of what their local zoning is. So I'm hopeful that we can be allowed to be Hyde Park. If you look around, I mean, how many corporate modifications have we gotten that not only Dunkin' Donuts, but Rite Aid, you can see our Rite Aid now everywhere.
McDonald's.
I mean, we have.
Even Dollar General, we
Yeah.
changed that look from what they first wanted. That was a lot.
We need to be Hyde Park. And
I understand, and I want to try to work with you on that, but also try to work with John on what his
his
goals
budget
are.
and corporate.
Correct.
We understand that you've got a little balancing act here.
Yep.
So we were prepared to refer this out tonight, including to county planning. But if you think that's premature because you think, I mean, I can pretty much assure you, Heather's been reviewing this since I've been here. I think you're going to hear her echo the same comments that you heard tonight.
I think let us take a different shot at the facade, and I don't know if we can email you offline or in between meetings and get some feedback and try to speed up the process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. I don't want to delay the process.
Sound okay to you, John?
No. No, we want to put a barn back that we took off in '97. You want to put the barn part back on there that it's not going to fix the problems I have inside. The biggest problems I have inside right now is the height, about getting the menu boards above the employees. It's about fixing the AC system in there that's outdated. It's about fixing everything that's outdated. This is buildings from 1960 something. We're
Can you
trying to
explain
put
what
a
you mean when you
Band-Aid on
said
it.
you took the barn off in '97? What do you mean?
They cut the barn off that in '97. Now you guys
Oh,
want to put that
the
back.
traditional look.
I'm
if you heard me, I did not say you have to use a gambrel style, but it has to be a traditional style.
The problem, we're trying to get up a little bit higher by putting on the new front of it. We're trying to get up higher so that we can put things up higher above the employees. We're trying to get it so that we can put air conditioning in there that actually works, so the ice cream doesn't melt for the customers before they leave. We're trying to put the menu board back a little bit further so that the cook can get the food in quicker.
Are you changing this? This appears as though you're keeping that exact same gambrel roof.
keeping it
You're
in
just
the
hiding
back,
it.
but
So the
in-
height that you're
in
going to
the
be able,
front-
excuse me, the height that you want is all up here in the front?
Yeah,
The height
we were
in the
actually
front.
extending that out. So he was getting some height above the entrance and above the ordered area.
And that can't be accomplished by just removing the gambrel roof entirely but keeping a more traditional peak style roof?
I think there's probably a way to accomplish it, whether it's keeping the gambrel or modifying the roof to a different style.
As long as it's not flat, as long as it's peaked?
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that there's going to be a new, believe me, when people were saying this is what I grew up with, this is the look, I'm aware that it's like when my grandmother grew up reading the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, she wore seam stockings and drove a coupe. These days, if they even read them, they look like all-American kids with tattoos. So things change and evolve with style. I don't think anybody's saying you have to keep this exactly. It's that they were saying they would prefer to see this enclosed rather than it go to this sort of hybrid style. And again, it's part of the nature is we're looking at these, which are really just forbidden by our code, basically, unless they're disguised somehow by cornices, et cetera. And that's an option for you too. But what we're seeing absolutely shows a flat roof. There's no attempt to disguise it.
Yeah, so one other option that we had talked about just before the meeting is taking the cornice that's on the monolith and extending it across this section of roof,
Mhm.
and then using the board and batten siding to make that look a little bit more traditional. So that's my thought as far as modifying this side of the building once we resolve whether or not the chimney's going to move or be modified, or, we'll discuss with John about the gambrel roof,
I
changing
mean,
it.
I know what you want. If you need to have more space up in the top, we want to accommodate that. It can be accommodated with more traditional styles.
And
I've been
Michael?
here 28 years. We need a lot more stuff here. It's like, that's the problem. It's just not there. And we're trying to add it so that we can put Band-Aids on some of the things that are broken, so that we can move forward, so we can stay in this town. At this point, to put all this money and keep doing all this other things to make it not work, doesn't make any sense for me.
But you
I'd
just
rather
said, you
move
just said
outside
you're
of
putting
Hyde Park
Band-Aids,
there.
you just said you're putting Band-Aids on it.
I don't see what you're telling me to do with it that's gonna make it work for what I wanna do.
Would it be better to raise the,
Let him work with Jay.
Can I just interject one thing to know? The maximum height required in Town Center Historic District is 40 feet, and your existing and proposed is 21 feet and 19, so you have a margin there to work with, at least if you need to raise up an area
higher.
and be able to put your mechanicals or whatever inside with, say, a peaked roof over it, that you would still, I believe, be able to accommodate the things that you need. So,
So you're saying try to keep the same roof line, just go higher with it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Possibly,
bring it
yes.
out towards
Yes.
Route 9
or a
all the
traditional
way.
style?
Right.
It doesn't have to be
or a
gambrel.
traditional style, right, but you would have some room in there. A lot of
Then
buildings,
high-
I believe, do that, where they have a higher roof to try to enclose their mechanicals so that they're not hanging out.
Yeah, we were extending the gambrel out, so, but it was being covered, and obviously you all see that, so, I think we need to go back and look at some options of whether or not keeping that or come up with a different style at the front. But that does give you the height that you're looking for, John, that it'll accommodate the air conditioning and the menu boards and all that we want.
Can I make a quick comment, Michael?
Yeah, of course.
Ann, do you have your existing picture? Oh.
Yes. That one?
I don't know if the rest of the board would agree with me, but I was kind of envisioning an idea where you have this roof line here, just kind of widening it to encompass, the entire building space, bringing it all the way out to your frontage, and then raising it up so you would achieve all your heights. So in theory, you would have that expanse in the front and carry that all the way through to the back with maybe, two cupolas to break up the
Yeah, so
the roof
basically
line.
expanding the gambrel out to the full width of the building.
Yes, and then carrying it back, maybe a couple of things to break up the, the peak, and then raise it up to achieve the height that, he needs.
And certainly, if you need to have more stone as a way to visualize, to communicate to younger people who've seen these in other locations, there's areas to add a lot of the same stone you're proposing right now on any of the building fronts you have. I mean, you've already got some stone, it's lower, and it's not the same style, I hope, is what you're proposing, because it looks sort of, it's from the 60s, it looks older. Oh, okay, sorry. But, I mean, a lot of this we mentioned in the first meeting, and I know it was hard to translate because I'm not an architect either. I don't speak architecture speak. That's why we tend to take pictures and show them to everybody of, here's what we're thinking of. And sometimes it's only one portion of something, but I think that there's a way to accommodate your needs and still make it, as Chris said eloquently and correctly, our comprehensive plan really charges our zoning and the planning board with helping to create a sense of place, because for so long people would come here and say, where's Hyde Park? Because they just drive through. And architecture is one way to help define a community, its public spaces, the interaction between pedestrians, activity. This is one of the best places where I see most people hanging out during the day and at night. You actually see physically people, I see people walking there sometimes from the Quality Inn, now that we have a sidewalk. I've seen like families go by, and because it's a destination for them. So I would like to work with you to see if there's a way to incorporate as much of the elements that are of the more modern, that only look the new look as of 98, I guess you're saying. But along with something that our code requires, which is to keep some traditional styles of architecture. Because the tradition that's proposed here isn't probably what's considered traditional under our code, put it that way, because it describes what kinds of lines are allowed. We even allow low slope, roofs, so you can, again, I don't know costs either. That's something that you know better than what I do as well. So we should hold off on referring this at first? Okay. And just so everybody knows, I think I emailed it out, but what Victoria was referring to was there's no way you can pull out if you parked here without going on the other side.
Oh.
Sure.
It's all owned by one person, and I assume employees park back there, because I don't think I've seen a lot of customers park back there and walk. But I do see people walking from here, parking here and walking over, because it's the closest path. So because this lot could be sold and people are traditionally using this, if this was sold and he said you can't use it anymore, we just want to solve that problem now. It's likely that Mr. Wajda would sell both, but who knows? So that's one little area we can clean up. And again, because when we had the fueling station here at Parker, they're proposing a change where they had encroached on the town right-of-way, but because they're not proposing any changes, that this is in effect grandfathered. That's per the town attorney. So otherwise, yeah, Mr. Deasing answered everything else on here. And Tad just wanted to note scale for the purposes of getting it down on the base.
No problem.
Because our code requires it, but that's just the addition of a second floor. So we'll wait to hear back from you?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And I didn't, by the way, I didn't hear anybody speak against the blue lights, so is that okay with everybody, or?
No, no.
Well, your other landmark building is the diner, and they have red lights, so come on.
That's 50 style, neon light.
I actually,
It's
I kept
retro.
thinking.
I could
thinking-
live with it if we.
If we could get the architecture
come
better.
back with something
We can all
that-
live with that,
that-
yeah. Because there's certain things that I.
Blue lights on this, no.
Now that I'm starting to see,
But you
now
want
that I went
to,
through all the DQs, they're everywhere. So that's got to be part of your iconography too. So I think that's one thing that I would personally say I'd be happy to give on.
And the chimney is also part of our.
Mhm. Does the chimney have a function, by the way?
The back side of it in our storage with dining rooms is used to display.
Thank you.
For different images.
Oh, it's like a TV screen, or?
Right, we have a TV screen in some, and we have our historical date charts of when Dairy Queen was the first built and everything, that all goes on the back of the chimney.
But that's why we're calling it chimney. I wondered if it was somehow used for cooking or something.
No, no cooking. Although this store does have a gas-fed fireplace on the other side of this one.
Oh, for seating on the inside? Okay. Well, thank you. I'm sure you're disappointed by the comments, but that's why I was trying to be kind of bad cop at the first meeting. But I assure you, the board is willing to work with you. It's just we've got to come up with something that hits all, that works for all three, so to speak. So we'll wait to hear back from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is Joseph Steakhouse. The applicants are requesting an extension of time in which to meet the conditions of approval. We had a timely request, and I wrote up this resolution, so who has this file?
I do.
Good night, Patrick and Victoria.
Good night.
Resolution granting extension of time to complete conditions of site plan approval pursuant to section 108-9.3E4C. Joseph Steakhouse, resolution number 2017-53B. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board acknowledges the underlying rationale for why certain conditions of the approval have not been met and grants the applicant the first 90-day extension as requested under section 108-9.3.E4C. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is site plan waiver for a generator located at 35 Hudson Drive. This is in the statewide area, scenic area statewide significant, sorry. We have the recommendation from the zoning administrator, and it's not visible from either one of the historic sites. So who has this resolution?
I do.
Thank you.
Nancy Cashman, 35 Hudson Drive, standby generator. Site plan waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, Resolution 2018-50. Whereas an application requesting a waiver of a site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Nancy Cashman on July 25, 2018 for property located at 35 Hudson Drive in the Town of Hyde Park. And whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives the site plan requirements for the file entitled Cashman-Generator regarding the specific request as submitted July 25th, 2018, and in the building permit application dated July 17th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. The next item is a site plan waiver to locate a generator at 21 Mulford Avenue. This is for Betty Shirley, and we have the recommendation of the zoning administrator. In this instance, the location of the house is actually visible from several sites that are listed on the National Registry, but the generator will not be located in the rear. So who has this resolution?
I do site plan waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, September 5th, 2018, Resolution 2018-57. Whereas, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit and associated site plan waiver received by the Planning Department September 4th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And did everyone have a chance to read my recommendation on local law F?
Yep.
It's kind of funny because, of course, they referred it to us when I asked them for the law in the first place. So it's not as though we're going to say no.
I did have a question, though.
Yeah.
So if the next time there is a new development, the law needs to be amended?
So
That part I didn't get.
when I asked Attorney Raplansky to create the law, my idea was that he would craft it such that when the planning board, through site plan for multifamily specifically, requires sidewalks, that it be, and on public streets, that they be automatically, that they would have to be maintained by the property owners or an HOA or something else. But he preferred to do it this way, so it will be amended every time that there's new laws. Part of it is because there may at some point be multifamily where there are no public roads dedicated. He wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion.
Gee, I know where you might be
Yes.
thinking about that. Okay.
So that's actually why he decided to do it this way, so it would need to be amended. And originally, the reason why the law has not been sent to us earlier was because he had originally written it to include the Blair Road and John's Way for Jeffrey Groves. But for them to be recognized as roads, even not even intend to be dedicated, we have to receive site plan approval first.
Okay.
He thought they might simultaneously receive it, so they didn't. So this law will be amended, in other words, each time, but it won't be referred back to us because the law itself, when it's amended, will just increase the number of roads included.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that
Thank
we
you.
authorize the chairman to send a comment letter to the town board regarding the proposed statements.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
There.
And now, has everyone had a chance to read all the minutes of the meetings that Cynthia sent out for us so nicely?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Making a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Making a motion to approve the minutes of August 1st, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Making a motion to approve the planning board minutes of August 7th with Ms. Dexter, Mr. Oliver abstaining.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion to approve the minutes of August 23rd, Ms. Dexter and Mr. Pickett absent.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was the special meeting for Rally.
Thank you.
That was the shortest minutes you've ever seen. It was just a resolution. And any other discussion?
Nope. No.
May I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, cool. I like the 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beats getting